Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to some more Faceit League. It has been a fantastic season so far, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but we are here with a very important marquee matchup, which is going to be pretty determinant on the playoffs coming up here in a couple of weeks. We've got Shikigami taking on Amplify, and Amplify, pretty comfortable position, currently 8-4. Another win for them essentially secures them a playoff spot, but for the 6-5 Shikigami, this is one of those games that feels like a must-win, because Dex, if they lose this game, they're going to be in a very tight spot to make that top 8.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as right now going on, we have maybe the marquee matchup of the regular season going on over on Bull Skunk's channel of Dreamland and Nightmare. But this one, like you said, very important for playoff-wise. You look at a team like Shikigami, you mentioned them 6-5, maybe not the record they would love to have, especially with this basically being the Midori team from last season who finished really well. Has been a strong team all of 2025, not off to the best 2026 here, but still a lot of time for them to bounce back and try to make sure they're put themselves in a favorable spot. A win against Amplify tonight would do that. Amplify, though, I mean, like you mentioned, they've played the most games of anyone in this North American Masters tier right now. Playing 12, this is their 13th game tonight. Only gonna have 2 more after that, so a win, like you said, might just guarantee them a playoff spot. Another win after that might just guarantee them maybe a potentially top 4 seed going into those playoffs. So a lot on the line for both these teams here tonight, especially as the games start to wind down here for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned that top 4 and how important it's going to be. And that seeding is going to be very important in that situation. Because remember, the top 4 teams throughout the playoffs specifically are going to move past that initial stage 4, stage 1 qualifiers for OWCS, which obviously is going to take a little bit of a load off their shoulders right there. And obviously give them a big confidence boost as well. And these are 2 teams that I think, from everything we've seen from them, with Amplify especially now, but Shikigami with this core roster in the past, both are capable of being in that top 4 position. They've obviously had their struggles against some of the top teams like Nightmare, like Dreamland. Obviously, as we're watching now, they're having one heck of a battle. But it's important to look at both these teams as legitimate threats to be in those playoffs, because we've seen it from both these squads before. Again, this is that core Midori squad that went and I believe was runner-up the season before, just lost out to Dreamland in that one. I think that was like a 4-3 game as well, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken. Incredible stuff. But there's every reason to be confident in both of these teams.
Yeah, and you have to remember, this Shikigami team was the Midori team that we saw in Season 5, who, let's just say, they had a little bit of a thing for going the distance, going to Map 5. So this is a team that I feel like no matter what, we'll be able to keep every game close here, especially as they wind down the stretch here. And, I mean, we've seen Shikigami teams in the past necessarily get on hot streaks towards the end of the season to make sure they get themselves into the playoffs here, but that's neither here nor there. However, one thing we're waiting for right now is the map pick. Shikigami going to be able to pick the map here that we're starting out on. And I feel like we've always seen teams here in North America kind of gravitate towards Nepal. I feel like we've seen more Nepal or Ilios. Busan is there, but I feel like me and you have seen it more in South America than here in North America. I would expect almost Ilios to come out here.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too surprising, all things considered, but Nepal is what we're going to see here. To be fair, you were on the right track, man. You were on the right track. You were going the right direction. While that took a minute, there was absolutely no time wasted by Shikigami banning out that Zarya.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise to see Zarya getting banned out here, especially on Nepal. I feel like this is maybe one of Zarya's best maps because there's just so much viability for Zarya on all 3 of the sub points. I mean, there's really nothing you really have to worry about. I mean, there's no good dive map here. Yeah, you could say villages potentially dive because of the high ground above the point, but Zarya just incredibly strong out here. That probably forces teams into probably Sigma, maybe back over to a little bit more like Ramatra. You could still see Doomfist, Wrecking Ball. It allows options to be there rather than having Zarya be there and potentially being that tank you have to kind of pick to just be able to mirror the other team.
Yeah, and obviously Amplify taking the time figuring out their selection, obviously got to be either DPS or support, but the selection has been made, so we'll find out momentarily what it's going to be. And let it be known, obviously, these are some stacked rosters, including those that are on the bench sometimes. We saw Seaful come in on their previous game that we saw here when Seaful kind of go back and forth. I think I've seen Garchomp come in quite a couple of times for Amplify as well. So you're likely going to see swaps at some point here in the series. You might see them right here. Obviously, we'll find out the moment that you do, obviously. But we'll see what the situation is. But we see this a lot with some of the other top teams. You think of other teams like Dreamland and Nightmare, obviously. I know they're the easy examples, but they are teams that have players on the roster that aren't always playing, but are still really high key players. And that's the same situation for both of these teams here as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any situation like what is going on in Nightmare and Dreamland Day, where I believe there are two players in that game who are technically on the rosters, but not gonna, I don't think, be playing for those teams anymore. Put an asterisk by that statement there, because I think it's still a little bit up in the air. But from what I believe Bullskunk said, there's two players in that matchup that aren't necessarily with those teams, still on the roster though. But I don't necessarily know if that's the case here. But yeah, like we talked about a lot, subs are very important here. We talked about Hero and Seaful probably being the biggest example of that, because just the tank pool difference is very huge, and it's really helped out Shikigami in the couple games that we have been able to see them. However, for the side of Amplify, I mean, we look at a lot of these players on this team. I mean, me and you, we really love J-Man. I think maybe one of the more, maybe, I don't want to say under-respected, but maybe just maybe one of those, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it's like going past my mind here, but a hit scan player that can really do everything here for them. Ewan as a support player, I mean, co-streamed last season before being picked up by, I believe it was the old Shikigami team. So we know them to be a really good player. I believe top 500 support player as well. So this is an Amplify team. The record really does show you how good this team is here. And like you talked about, Hunter, before we went live, the teams that they've lost to really make sense when you start to look at it.
Yeah, because they are some of those top teams that are up there. Again, you have teams like Nightmare, like Dreamland, Nightmare Academy, Extinction, all teams that are very much out there that are going to be very serious contenders. But something these teams are not going to have to contend with for this first matchup is going to be the May, which, to be fair, on Nepal, especially, you get to things like Shrine, where that wall is extremely critical. Honestly, I think it's really critical on all three maps, especially when you're defending points. So not wanting to deal with that, I respect it to the highest degree.
Yeah, absolutely. Shrine, I think Village is maybe the more optimal spot for the May, because there's only two ways on and off that point. The ice wall basically blocks off one and makes it almost essentially a prison there. So I think these are two really smart bans. Zarya getting out of the way, because I think this is honestly one of Zarya's best maps. May, like you said, can work well on every point. These two kind of fit each other when it comes into why they're being banned out here. And I just believe ice wall itself is still one of the better, or maybe potentially one of the best abilities in the game here. As there's, I don't know what's going on in chat right now, but you're laughing at it. But again, we have to really talk about this here tonight. This is a very important game for both these two teams. Like we talked about, Amplify with a win brings them up to 9 wins on the season with 2 more games to go. We've talked about that 8, 9, I would say 9, 10 win mark is probably safe for playoffs here. So a win here tonight puts Amplify on that 9-win thing, so they would be safe for it. Shikigami, though, definitely needs a win here tonight. Yeah, they still have a couple more games to go after this, but we've talked about it. Some tough opponents, and they really cannot afford to be basically playing with their playoff lives going into those final 3 games.
Yeah, you definitely can't. You do not want that level of stress, and obviously this loss would mean a lot more towards the way of Shikigami were they not to take it away. Amplify losing this, it's not the end of the world. You still have a couple games you can definitely win, but a big win against a big team like this, get yourself a better seated spot. It's going to be all for the better as we'll be starting over on Sanctum here on Nepal. And hey, those lineups not changing from what we're used to seeing from either of these squads. We'll see what they both want to come out on right here. And to be fair, I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure we saw something very similar from Shikigami previously. I think this is genuinely what they're going to come out with.
Oh, yeah, absolutely here. I mean, like we kind of said, I expect to see Sigmas come out on this map, especially with Zarya being banned out. I felt that made the most sense. We saw it, I believe, last week when we covered Nightmare Academy and YFP on the same exact map. Symmetra was really important. One team really excelled using the Symmetra, while the other team kind of struggled for the most part. That's going to be really interesting here. But I think the most interesting pick when you look at these two teams here is Cave coming out on this Bastion. I think just the amount of damage the Bastion can throw, it's going to be something that, if you're not ready for it on the other side here for Amplify, it's going to automatically wreck a team fight here pretty early on.
Yeah, and this is going to be really interesting. You see that TP running on the back support line. Ewan getting incredibly low. You're seeing Immortality again, eventually be forced out there by Crazy Cat. Everybody getting a little bit low, but honestly, with J-Man and the way that they're playing, they want to play a little bit more on the range side, especially J-Man. If J-Man is caught in a weird position, it's going to be difficult to deal with. But points slowly being capped, TP across the way. They're trying to run people down, but for the time being, no one's going down, and at least for the moment, Shikigami's got that map pretty secure.
Yeah, Ewan right now here for Amplify is going to be a really big player here for them. They have to use the speed to get their team out of dodge, out of sticky situations. Ewan, they'll go for the boof, and instead, they get to find themselves getting caught out.
Yeah, but Hero going down is honestly pretty massive right now. Gap stay alive, this will be pretty big, but going to the point is what's going to be the more difficult part right here. You see, eventually Biz is going to go and create that separation over on the point. It's kind of forced away, and you can't really touch this point right now. There's way too much poke to have to deal with.
You can't touch it. Hell, you really can't touch because you don't have your own tank here. You're kind of waiting for them. The fact that Amplify's sticking in this fight as long as they have been, or Shikigami sticking in this fight has been impressive, but Amplify is coming out here from both sides.
Yeah, going for it right now. Ewan does get the boop onto Triplet. So this is going to open up the door, but Zach goes down as well. It's just Ewan and J-Man hanging around, and that is just not going to be enough.
I mean, I think we saw this same exact thing happen last week where boobs were something you really had to watch out for on this map, and I believe it might have also just been Ewan who did that last week as well. I mean, you have to be ready for it, especially on a map like this where that pit is such a big thing to play around here. A lot of teams like to play on the edge here, especially with Lucios, who are not afraid to get in your face. They are looking for those moves time after time as Seaborn, again, find the first pick here as you already see them rotate back.
Yeah, and the flux from Gap gets nobody, but Ewan gets two more. Wait a minute. Ewan, you son of a gun, gets a third, by the way. Okay.
I mean, sometimes you just need plays like that coming out. The flux from Gap got canceled, I believe, by Hero. So those two boop kills by Ewan basically made up for it right there. And man, did they make up for it huge. Amplify now back in control of the point here. However, you look over at Shikigami coming in with artillery, flux, photon barrier, beat. They're in a really good spot right now. Sundering Blade and Dragon's on the other side here. For Amplify is going to be very important for them.
Yeah, Triplet is going to get hit with that, so is it going to have the beat on in time? Flux coming through from Hero is going to help get rid of two, is helping to secure this fight back up. It looked like it could have been held onto by Amplify, but instead, it should slowly fall over, but J-Man Ewan still trying to keep this fight alive best they possibly can. And as a matter of fact, I think they've done it. Hero just can't touch here. Is going to have to back out.
They really cannot touch their Gap now coming back in on the Doomfist. I like this swap here, especially this late in the point. You want a little bit more disruption, especially with what you're seeing actually come out here from Shikigami. It could actually do a decent number to them, just not necessarily being ready for it. However, one accretion landed on to Gap could really end everything. Biz, though, still has the Southern Blade ready to go, waiting for the perfect opportunity as you're already starting to see Gap get in that backline, but they have no escape.
Yeah, there's no cooldowns left, nothing you can do, and now this fight is going to be nigh impossible to win right now. I don't know if you want to realistically invest anything here. Biz is in the backline trying to do something, but it's just surrounded on all sides. The entire, like, backline core is kind of looped all the way around, but this is a really difficult spot to be at right now.
Nikki back in control of the point right now, but still Sundering Blade now coming out. It's going to be able to find Seaborn. That's actually been a huge pick here early on.
Yeah, now they're invading the room. Crazy Cat's in such a rough situation. No healing available for Gap. Was going to go for the punch, not getting anything. And now with everyone dying one after another, the worry is going to be getting a touch. And to be fair, J-Man is the only one capable now.
Yeah, J-Man is the only one capable, but you're going to have to deal with Triplet, who's right there waiting for a boop to punch to get people away. And no, J-Man is not going to be able to get there in time. Shikigami going to take our first point here of the night. And I mean, it was good back and forth. Gap, though, coming on this Doomfist, well, I thought would actually work out a little bit better for them. I think we almost saw it immediately backfire on them. They punched into the backline. It was a 4v1, and they put themselves in a spot where no one could really get them out of dodge. And then they stuck with it, which I understand why you do that, but I felt like just that was maybe a one-life thing where you want to try to hold on that point a little bit longer. It just didn't end up working out. Shiki played that almost perfectly there for the most part. And honestly, we've been seeing this a lot where Vendetta has been a really make-or-break character for a lot of teams. I think Biz really struggled on the Vendetta. I mean, I'm looking at the stats. Yeah, they have the most damage on their team, but it's not necessarily leading to a lot there, as really you're seeing Shikigami actually play around it very well. And especially keeping someone like Cabe, maybe the one target that Biz could easily just farm alive in these situations, has been huge for them here, as you already see the two teams here taking opposite sides of the point. J-Man up on that high ground. One headshot from them, one pick really goes a long way. I always say that with these sniper hit scan characters, but honestly, it just does. And we've seen what J-Man's been able to do in the past, Hunter. If they get hot, they are incredibly hard to shut down.
Yeah, you see right now, you can kind of see them hanging around looking for a potential TP on this high ground, but to be fair, J-Man and Ewan are going to be able to, like, bail so quickly on that. But at least for the moment, point is going to be taken away here by Shikigami. They have all the force in the world, but with the cooldowns running out, this is where you're going to see that level of aggression pick up. Cabe goes down first and foremost. Gap getting burnt away a little bit right there, but I think eventually with all these cooldowns going to form, 10%, it's all that's going to be on the board. Zach pushed away. Now it's just going to be the cleanup game here for Amplify.
Yep, the cleanup is going to come here pretty swiftly. Gap could be able to get Hero there, just, you know, Hero, helping Hero off the map there. But honestly, that was a really smart play there by Amplify. You needed that kind of play. You let Shikigami take the point. You gave up some space, but then you came back in, essentially cutting off almost all angles other than leaving it for Shikigami just to back straight up. Hero, though, finding Gap, and what goes from maybe a good fight almost now goes to, you're just trying to stall out this point here a little bit, as already you see Shikigami TPing behind Amplify.
Yeah, I mean, Gap is just so far away. You have to give up this point. Gap, unfortunately, I think just really too far forward. Nothing can really be done in that situation. But you're coming in, you're going to have the flux, and you're not going to have a beat to be able to sustain through it. So if it's massive, this could be the thing they need to turn this fight around. But of course, it's Gap waiting for that potential opportunity. Zach is literally sitting at 1 health, is going to be followed up on, is eventually going to be taken down, but at what cost? And the cost is Biz going down. Gap, if they want to make this fight happen, this has got to be a big flux. And here it comes. It's sent up in the air. It's going to catch on to 2 people. Getting low, beat, and Immortality Field going to be used.
Beat, that's always a scary beat right there coming down from a flux, because if you hit the ground first, it will kill you and you will lose the beat. But Shikigami still holding on to the point. Cave gonna have their own ultimate ready to go here, but I don't think they use it this fight. Hell, I don't think they'll be given the chance.
They will not. That point close to getting unlocked right now. J-Man going to be taken out eventually, but the point is going to flip back over. Incredibly back and forth, scrappy if nothing else. And now you see the separation as Triplet not going to be able to get out alive. And now I think Gap learned the lesson of pushing up, but keep in mind, the way the ult economy is right now, it really, really favors Shikigami.
Oh, easily. I mean, you look at the flux. That's just one thing that you would automatically say, like, hey, they're in a much better spot because they have their tank. But I'm looking more at Zach's photon barrier. I feel like that always divides up the field just perfectly a lot of the times, and it's a very key ultimate. I mean, it gives you so much space to kind of play a little bit freely. There's the photon barrier out, and look at what this does to Shikigami. They immediately try to go in. Sundering Blade coming out, though. It's going to be a whiff this time around, as already I think this photon barrier has done what it needed to do.
Yeah, getting a couple bodies low, you're going to have that dragon still ready, but it's incredibly back and forth. J-Man's going to get separated from the squad for a moment there. Gapping down means you lose all these defensive capabilities, and this fight is going to eventually fall apart as J-Man is going to get tripled on the way out. Biz is still hanging around as well. Unfortunately, you're going to throw the dragon in there and not get anybody, so 87%, I think this is where you see J-Man make the swap over to the Sojourn now.
The Soj, I would not even be mad if they go over to something like Cassidy. Just something that can be a little bit more in there with the team, but no, they're going to stick with this Hanzo. I don't necessarily hate it. I think they've actually been doing a little bit better on the Hanzo this round than what they were doing last point on that Soj. But you're looking at it right now. You're still holding on to the Flux. You're still holding on to the artillery. Shikigami is in a really good spot. Seaborn about to come up to their own amp matrix here again. Again, they've been setting this up really well, and while, yeah, Hero could have used his Flux a little bit earlier, I think the fact they've held on to it so long shows you how much confidence they have in their team to really win these fights. And you could also say Hero's never been the first one to die here.
Yeah, the longer this fight goes on, the better it's realistically going to be in this situation as you're trying to get everybody out of there. Crazy Cat has to use the Immortality Field as you're trying to make something happen, but the problem is someone has to touch this point, and it looks like it's probably going to have to be Biz to go and do it as J-Man does go down. Here goes to the assassination attempt. They go all in. All in might not be good enough, though. Body's getting low. Amp Matrix is going to be able to come online, but the beat is online. Triple's going to start running through body after body. Flux is in the air. Rock comes through. Body's getting super low. Gap trying to bring this one back around for the squad, but everybody, Amplify, getting lower and lower. J-Man coming back on that Tracer to try to do something to the squad, but with 4 people still up, still secure, it's going to be a matter of time before eventually this should be first map heading over to Shikigami.
A really, really good map here from Shikigami. Again, we came into the series talking about how Shikigami, this is a little bit more of an important series for them. A loss here basically doesn't put them on backs against the wall where one more loss would almost jeopardize their playoffs, but it would be almost to that point. A win here goes a long way, and this is a really good start here for the Shikigami team who, I mean, Hunter, me and you talked about it a little bit before we came on live here. Shikigami, the fact that they're kind of, the record is what it is maybe a little bit of a surprise here to both of us as we look at the players on this team and are really, we know how good they are. The fact they've dropped a couple games here and there is a little bit unorthodox from them, but like we've also said, this is a team that once they get hot, man, could they really go toe-to-toe with anyone in this in this tier, I believe. But again, a really good start here. I think they did a good job shutting down Amplify at all phases of it. You could look at the tank. You could look at J-Man. Again, me and you highlighted J-Man before going into that map there. Only 8 elims, the least in the lobby for someone that we said once they get going, they're hard to stop.
Incredibly hard to stop. It's difficult to find out what to do in that situation, but now that you're here and you kind of see the marquee comp that Shikigami wants to come out with, I think you have a plethora of bans available in the situation. And when you look at something like Runasapi, you could decide, hey, maybe we get rid of the Bastion, maybe we get rid of the Symmetra. I think those might be the main two, because you could get rid of something like the Sigma or the Lucio, but again, you saw how well that Amplify was also able to play those characters, and obviously doing so is going to be a big change around, but maybe you make them uncomfortable by getting things like the Bastion Sim out of there. Obviously, we'll have to find out. We know at the very least that Runasapi was that first pick. I didn't catch that first ban, by the way. Oh, it was Bastion. Okay. Makes sense. Plenty of sense.
It makes a lot of sense, however. I feel like this is maybe a little bit of an overreactionary ban here. I understand why you're getting rid of it. A lot of damage comes out from that Bastion, especially in the hands of Cabe, considering they had 10,000 damage, the most on Shikigami, only second to what Gap was able to do on the tank there for Amplify. Again, that's what we talk about a lot of time with Bastion. They can put out so much damage in so little time. It's very, very hard for some teams to really deal with that. And especially with what Amplify was running, they were playing that Vendetta. They were playing that Hanzo. Yeah, Hanzo you could really look as a decent counter to a Bastion, but you have to be able to at least see the Bastion. And Vendetta, again, can get there, can really, I think, farm off a decent amount of the charge that she has, maybe even the health if you have that perk from Bastion. But again, you're putting yourselves in a very, very vulnerable spot if you're just going to be focusing solely on the Bastion. I think getting rid of the Bastion here, while it may be a little bit overreactionary, I still think it's a solid ban from Amplify, but now you're going to have to deal with it the rest of the series, potentially.
Yeah, it's going to be a very real possibility that you're going to have to deal with it. The question, obviously, is how soon you decide to take it out of the equation. But at the very least, we know the other ban, it's going to be that Kiriko being taken out, which means it's going to force the Baptiste Lucio for both of these sides, which I think, as well as Ewan was, as well as they were performing, when you have a team like Zach and Seaborn going at it, they were extremely consistent in that first map, and it's really difficult to decide to take them off anything but Bap Lucio right now.
Yeah, and let me also say this. Ewan had the most elims for Amplify. Great performance by your support player, but normally if your support player has the most elims, normally that's not a good thing. I mean, Ewan, I think, had won their team a lot of fights on that first point, but didn't really find that value there on that second point. We know Ewan likes to play a little bit of aggressive when they play the Lucio, and I think maybe sticking with it here is a good thing. You want to play a little bit aggressive on this map. I really do think it's going to be interesting to see what these two teams come out with here, as we do see the Sigma coming back out here now for, I believe that's Shiki, right? Don't want to be wrong.
Oh, you're seeing. Wait, so who? Let me double check right now.
Yeah, Shiki coming back out here with the Sigma here. Again, not necessarily the biggest shock in the world to me because it worked out so well for them last time. But you're seeing that Zarya come back in here. Remember, Zarya was banned out map 1. Honestly, I think it was banned out by Shikigami, which you're seeing why. I talked about how Zarya could be really good on that map. Zarya could be still really good on this map. However, we're not seeing the Bap Lucio come out here from Amplify. Instead, it's going to be the Lucio Juno, which we have seen a lot from them. Again, they like to play fast, they like to be in your face, and you have speed ring and you have just general speed from Lucio here. So you could definitely see something come out here from Amplify that wants to get into the face here very, very early.
Yeah, very much so. J-Man almost taking off somebody's head right there. Cape trying to do the exact same thing, but no one wanted to go down quite yet. As a matter of fact, though, Cap haven't used both of those bubbles is rather low right now. Can only pursue so much further right now. Biz eventually going to be hit with the accretion, going to be taken out. And now with that, Ewan is still somehow getting boosts. Listen, buddy, we're going for the record here. We'll figure out the over-under later. But right now, this fight is still very much winnable for either side. Both tanks are hanging around, but Gap is in a much more vulnerable situation. But hey, as I say that, Triplet's taken down. You lose all of that speed on both sides of the equation. This is a very chaotic fight once again to get things started.
Yeah, but right now I still think if you're Amplify, you feel confident about this fight. You have members coming back, Biz is back, Gap is still alive, and you still have Crazy Cat there, able to heal them up. And you're seeing the rest of your team kind of fall back here already, but Gap's still trying to at least keep the front line going here. But this is what you want from Amplify. You want them to have this kind of long, drawn-out fight. I feel like it favors their team a little bit more here. But if you're Biz, you have to be constantly communicating here with Gap, not to put yourself in danger.
Yep, Biz down, and that Amateur is going to be thrown out first and foremost right here. Seaborn in a great situation, and that's going to help them move forward, take this first fight away as everyone will be falling one after another. A little bit of stall game, trying to get as close to that grab as humanly possible. Gap does get one on the way out, but that's going to be the extent of that one as eventually Point going to start heading back the other way as lead will be taken away by Shikigami.
A 2-minute long fight off the point, off the start. We don't see that a lot. 100. I feel like me and you see the first point get capped in 2 minutes more than the first fight actually end. But look what these teams are going to have coming in this fight. Seaborn used the Amateur's last fight just to get stuff going, but you're going to have Flux, you have Overclock, Beat, Blizzard. Look at everything that Amplify already has. Grab, Orbital, their own Overclock. I mean, you have ultimates coming up here for both teams. Right now, though, the Flux coming out here early on.
What?
Yep, though. Capturing Hero in the sky.
And Hero is going through the means right now, and eventually the solo comes through. J-Man barely escapes the freeze, and now everybody's separated. Cave's going to try to pull this one back further. Remember, it is a 4v4 right now. Cave gets rid of a second one in this fight. Gap, though, with all of the damage of the world, going to run them down. And now this core, without Hero back in, has to run for the hills, and that bot going to start going back the other way.
And everyone can be able to escape here for Shiki. That's a huge thing. Honestly, it is. The fact that they're able to get out alive means they can come back in really, really quick, especially with the lead not being that much. But that was a costly fight there for both teams. 3 ultimates came out there from, well, Shikigami. Amplify, I think, used 3. Actually, they only used 2, but you still have your Overclock here from J-Man, which, again, all you really need for J-Man is one pick, and you see them get going here. Ewan, though, Beat ready to go. I would not be surprised if once they start around this corner, that Beat comes out so they can start playing aggressively.
Yep, and there comes that aggression. Beat given immediately in response. J-Man is pressured out, doesn't quite get the benefits of that sound barrier, and now it's Gap with all the damage in the world, trying to keep everybody back, and slowly but surely that card is making its way towards that checkpoint, but Gap is literally in the middle of nowhere right now, should be burnt away, but Biz gets rid of 2 with a Sundering Blade, as the point is going to get capped.
That's almost, I'm more amazed that Biz was able to get 2 with that ultimate right there, considering they were standing in front of the window, in front of the Amp Matrix. It could have been just one person looking at them there. That could have been the difference maker, but no, Biz finds 2. First point capped here now for Amplify as they need to get something going here. And with half the time banks almost gone here, you're looking at what they're coming up to here. Another grab, another Orbital Ray. Zach now making the swap over to the Vendetta as well off the May, where, I mean, they found some success, but I think the Blizzard absolutely whipping was almost the nail in the coffin, but grab out here.
Yeah, that is a crazy grab, and the crazier part is that it's actually kind of working out right now. They're going to team wipe. They use quite a bit for that as well, but to be fair, to have such a substantial lead, I don't hate it whatsoever.
Absolutely. By the time that you see another fight be engaged out here, you're almost going to have a 100-meter lead, which you are absolutely take, because it puts them into that point where me and you always talk about this 50-50 fights. You're okay losing it because you know you're going to come right back in. But you're looking now over at Shikigami here. Flux going to be out from Hero, barely going to be able to cap. You're going to be able to find that's a huge pick.
Yeah, that is massive at this stage of the game. J-Man already gets rid of 2. And now, rough situation. They're going to try to keep moving forward. J-Man going to fall back and try to take care of some business, but eventually we are going to see this fight naturally come towards its end. Triplet put in a weird situation, though, unfortunately. Going to be finished off, but it's realistically not going to be enough here, as with the full webs coming through with bot, he's going to slowly start headed the other way.
Yeah, but the fact that J-Man and Ewan got those picks on the way out are huge here for Amplify. It really forces now Shikigami to play a little bit slower than what they really want. As you see, they're trying to at least reset the spawn, so they're not going to be able to. Hero also making the swap over to Zarya. The Sigma, I thought, had its value at the start, but as this map has slowly gone on, it's really started to lose almost any kind of value you would perceive it to have. Overclock out here from Cave, though. Could it be a difference maker here in this fight?
It's starting to be right now. Gets taken care of, but J-Man trying to keep things going as well. Eventually going to be taken care of by Zach, and his triplet trying to get the speed off potentially in time is extremely close to having it. But with two already down over on the side of Amplify, it's going to be hard to bring this one back around. And to be fair, they have room to surrender, especially if it means making sure Gap keeps that charge.
Yeah, I mean, they're giving up all that room right now. You finally do see Shikigami get back to the barrier here, starting to push it up here a little bit again. But J-Man has the overclock ready to go here, but you're looking at the other side. Triplet has beat Sundering Blade out from Zach. Those can be two ultimates that really open it up. Sundering Blade coming out from Zach now, but looks like they might be stuck inside.
Yeah, not able to get anybody, but it is going to buy a little bit more space right now. Gap is completely separated from the rest of the squad. We do see a little bit of back and forth right there. Hero, again, with all of that charge, is making things happen. So checkpoint should be an inevitability here eventually for Shikigami. And with 3 minutes still on the clock, they still have a pretty decent amount of time to work with.
Yeah, that almost 100-meter lead now is slowly getting whittled down here. Like we said, they almost got that 100-meter lead with just about halfway left to go in the map. Well, it hasn't been 2 minutes since that time. And now you only really have, yeah, it's still, 70 meters, but you're slowly starting to see the Shikigami team come right back in. Hero and Seaborn coming up to a good combo with ultimates here. But Biz, you need that pick here early for Amplify. You're going to be able to find it. What momentum do you get off of it, though?
Hopefully enough right now. You see Hero so close to getting cut down. The grab is still available, but it would be potential weapons to use this in this situation. At least for now, though, Zach is taking care of, so that bot definitely going to start heading back the other way. Time is slowly moving forward, but to be fair, you're going to have a pretty decent ult economy going into this next fight.
And Zach not catching the bus right there, going all the way back to the far spawns, and that's also going to pull Triplet back there just to get them back into the fray as well. And again, you look at the other side, Sundering Blade, Grav, Orbital Ray ready now for Amplify. Those are three really scary ultimates to be looking at. Triplet, though, also getting off the Lucio here, going over to the Wu Yang instead. Wants a little bit more poke damage coming out here. I don't blame him for that, as the backline for Amplify is kind of living on their own.
Yeah, 100%. The grab works out pretty well in that situation. Triplet does end up going down, but I think the damage realistically is going to be enough. Hero trying to go for the 1v1, getting to ground. Biz is in there, manages to get rid of 2 in this fight. It's just Gap with them in this situation, with Hero having all of this charge. It's going to be so difficult to deal with, and Hero, all they can do is start trying to carry the bot back to the midpoint.
They're going to be able to do that there. I think Biz is not going to get those forward spawns, but everyone else here for Amplify is. And, I mean, I got to give Amplify a lot of credit there. Once that grab came out there from Hero, they kind of just said, we're not really going to invest anything into this fight. Yeah, Biz used the Sundering Blade, got one for it, but you would rather much have the grab ready to go in this fight. Now Seaborn, they have their own Orbital Ray ready to go here now for Shikigami. That becomes such a huge linchpin in this fight because it needs to be able not only to sustain people through it, but also be able to help fight a lot of kills. However, Crazy Cat throws the first punch.
Yep, double Orbital Ray, and J-Man goes down first and foremost. It's going to be really tough to deal with. But again, we're back to that situation where both these teams are trading a lot. But Gap having the grab here is going to be extremely important. I don't know if they want to use it in this situation right here, but with the way things are kind of winding down, it might start becoming a critical situation, especially as the grab comes through. 2 are going to be pulled inside of it right now. Both are going to be deleted. Ewan gets rid of both. Triplet extremely low, trying to keep something going here. It's going to be bubbled out to get the Mega, but at least for the time being, this is only going to be temporary relief.
Yeah, and losing you in there is not necessarily what you wanted. They're your speed. They're also your only ultimate ready to go right now. Shikigami back to the car, and look what they're coming up to here. Sundering Blade, Tidal Wave, Tidal Blast, Grab, Overclock. I mean, Shikigami's put themselves into a really good position here. If you're Gap, you might be questioning the usage of the grab that last fight there, because that could have been something that really would have won your team this fight here now, which could have been the final nail in the coffin for this map. But one pick is all that Amplify might need, as already Cave popping off with the Overclock here. But Shikigami, Amplify, just gonna let it go away, essentially.
Yeah, and it's gonna come down to this final fight. Realistically, there's still a lot of distance to happen right now, but grab gonna come through. It's gonna be able to keep everybody alive for the time being within that grab, but Triplet still is gonna try to go in. Not finding anything with that Tidal Wave right there. Crazy Cat, though, is extremely low. Is trying to cut somebody down, and it's gonna be Ewan who goes down first and foremost. Hero Gonna try to stay alive, burn down somebody. Gap, though, managing to get rid of one in this scenario. Back to the 4v4. And remember, this is going to aid Amplify in this situation. You have the much closer spawn to Zero, trying their darndest to keep all that charge going. And hey, that charge is working out brilliantly as they're trucking on forward. Crazy Cat wants to try to pull this one back around. J-Man is going to have the overclock. It is down to J-Man to clutch this one up, make it with the one. He's gonna get rid of the second, make it a third. J-Man clutching up for Amplify to tie up the series.
I was gonna say Amplify was slowly coming back into that fight. They're getting those ultimates. Crazy Cat was so close, so very close to having that orbital ray online. And then they lost Gap, and I thought, oh no, this is it all coming down for Amplify. But J-Man popping off, using that orbital ray to keep them sustained. The overclock coming in clutch to really secure them that map as it almost slipped away from there. Shikigami put up a really good fight there to get it really close there towards the end. But Amplify doing what they need to do there, really benefiting off of getting that huge lead early on. But Shikigami, I think they made really good swaps there. You got rid of Sigma in favor of the Zarya. You brought out the Wu Yang, which wasn't a hero we really talked about a lot, but I thought it did exactly what you wanted it to do. Provide a little bit of poke and really just keeping that orb essentially on the Vendetta there for them. It allowed them to still play a little bit more aggressively, and as well as having that Zarya there as well, it allowed, I believe it was Cave, to just still play very aggressively on that Vendetta to Shikigami's benefit. However, Amplify in the end, they got a hero there to really come in clutch there. Both Crazy Cat and J-Man were huge benefactors in that final fight.
Yeah, that combination was incredible. And remember, going to that fight, they were really far down the ult economy. Like, no one was even above, like, the 65% marker outside of Ewan, who had that beat at the beginning of the fight. And it helps them sustain a little longer in that fight, enough for eventually Crazy Cat and J-Man to come back with their ults and clutch that fight up. It's massive, and now it ties back up this series, but obviously, with us going to King's Row on this next one, and Shikigami having the first ban, they could easily decide to ban out something akin to a Hanzo, which not only did we see from J-Man earlier, but it also stops them from banning out the Symmetra and stopping those shenanigans once more.
Yeah, absolutely. But you also have to remember, they now have to deal with Amplify playing Zarya the rest of this match.
True.
That was the first ban we saw come out from Shikigami map 1, and that's probably would have been the map. That probably would have been the ban here if Zarya was not banned out map 1. Amplify, I mean, you saw what Gap was able to do on that Zarya there. The stats might not necessarily show up there for Gap with only 16 eliminations, but 11,000 damage and almost 7,500 damage mitigated just from Zarya is a really good there. So Hanzo being banned out, though, like you said, it really slows down J-Man. However, Sojourn is still there. I feel like the biggest reason why you're getting rid of the Hanzo is because Dragon Strike here definitely does find a lot of value, especially with how aggressively these teams really do like to play. So that could be an ultimate that really causes a lot of problems.
100%. And one thing, obviously, which isn't as utilized as much nowadays, but if you combine that J-Man play with how good you saw that Gap earlier on that Zarya, Grab Dragon is always a combo, and you don't have to play super aggressive as a Hanzo. You have plenty of high grounds and little side angles to work with on a map like King, so especially if you're in situations during that first point and third point, there's a lot to work with. And obviously, it's a possibility here, as well as we'll see what the ban is going to be for Amplify. Again, it's either got to be a support or a tank. You could potentially see it going down the route of a Sigma, because to be fair, in that scenario, I don't know if I want to play the Sigma back into the Zarya with how things went last map. Maybe that's a situation where Seaful needs to come in to swap and play something. Obviously, we'll find out momentarily, but I do think there's a multitude of good options here.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to remember, we saw the Sigma actually swapped out for their own Zarya there for Shikigami, just because the Sigma was not really doing a lot to Gap on that Zarya. So yeah, this could be a time where we see Seaful come in. We talked about how vital and how important these subs are for both these teams. Seaful probably being maybe the most important sub that we could see come in here for Shikigami, and maybe one that you might need coming into this map here, especially if you are expecting to play a little bit more brawly playstyles. So far throughout the night, Hero has kind of been leaning towards Sigma and Zarya, which again, poke, and yeah, Zarya you could say is brawl, but I feel like you maybe want to have a player on that tank who has a little bit more comfortability with it. Not saying anything about how Hero played there. I mean, Hero had the most elims in the lobby last map after swapping over to Zarya with 23 and the most damage. So they definitely do know how to play, but this might just be something where Seaful coming in might just provide you a little bit more security for Shiki going into the King's Row.
Yeah, we'll see. There's a minute left on the timer, and obviously teams still have time to decide if they want to make any swaps. I'm sure. Obviously, I think teams pretty commonly have situations where they know if they're going to a particular map or a particular ban goes through, that swaps come into play in those situations. We'll obviously find out what the scenario will be momentarily, but I could see both rosters very much staying the exact same, especially the way that Amplify was playing that last one. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the 5 that you're going to see potentially for the rest of the night. Especially when, again, the way the bans have gone, there's nothing stopping them from basically doing what they did in that last game here on King's Row, and it's going to be down to them to decide, hey, what is going to stop us from doing what we do in this situation, which, to be fair, with the bans at hand, you can't get rid of the Symmetra, and it looks like it's going to be the Baptiste. Interesting.
I like it. I like the ban. BAP has been really used by both teams here, but we kind of saw it last map where Amplify, they came out with that Juno Lucio composition, and it worked very well for them. Shikigami, they were just kind of stuck using that Baptiste for the longest time, really. Hell, remember, they got rid of the Lucio instead of the Baptiste going into those final couple fights where it was the Wu Yang coming out instead. So BAP being banned out here by Amplify, I think, is a really, really smart ban, especially because, like I said, Shikigami has primarily always had one of the support players playing that Baptiste. So I think these are really good bans by both sides. I think Amplify maybe has a little bit of the edge when you talk about it in that case, because J-Man, you get rid of one hit scan, there's several other hit scans you have to deal with. Even though Hanzo might find a little bit more value than Soj on this map, there's still other people, there's still other heroes that you will have to deal with.
Yeah, plenty of them. There is a deep hero pool for a lot of these players here. I think J-Man very much falls in that camp as well. We'll find out as we're getting ready to head into King's Row, our third map of the series, and this has been honestly an incredibly back-and-forth series. Neither map so far has been a one-sided affair at all. So I'm excited to see what this is going to be, because remember, if this does go all the way, this third map is extremely important, because then you get that map pick, that first ban for that 5th and final map, and we know how critical I think these bans have already been so far.
Yeah, and no subs from either team. That was one thing maybe we could potentially see come out from the side of Shiki. Mm-hmm. Nothing coming out from them here. That's not necessarily the biggest surprise, but again, we maybe kind of expected it just briefly. However, you do see Gap coming out here on their Mantra, like I said, a little bit more brawly tank. This is still primarily known as a brawl map, even though you could definitely play some dive, which, hey, Hero at least teasing us with a Diva pick, but probably gonna be going right back over to the Zarya. Actually, okay, there it is. Going over to the Zarya here for them. I, again, like this very much for them. Shiki, though, again, you want to get off to a good start here. I think Zarya's going to be able to give you a lot. And, hey, you have to remember, Bastion now back in play after being banned out map 2. Well, they were in play.
Yeah, you know, Bastion arrived and then left. Simple as that. But now, without Cave there, you can't really do anything. You have to wait and do a different process. And remember, the fact that they don't have the Symmetra for this right now means they're going to have to naturally do these rotations.
Yeah, I mean, Zach trying to dive up there on that high ground, but look how much they just get kind of melted down trying to get up there. Gap and J-Man doing a good job just preventing anyone from getting up to that high ground. The only person on the low ground right now for Amplify is actually just Cave. Biz, who's just kind of controlling the low ground for the brief moment, while Zach, again, trying to go up on that high ground. Only one person went with them, and that was Hero, who's now on their own, essentially, before you see Zach just dive right back up there.
Yeah, he's going to try to drop on that point. Someone is eventually going to have to go down here, because there's not a whole lot of pressure, but Hero, with a bunch of charge, is going to go drop. But Seaborn is down first and foremost, and this is where you see a little bit of aggression from Biz. Is going to be in an awkward scenario, especially now Zach is gone. Shikigami not faring all too well, and Hero is going to lose out on all of that delicious charge. J-Man does die in the fight, but would definitely be back on time.
Definitely will be back on time here. And, I mean, again, we're seeing Amplify come out here with a little bit of a different support line than what we kind of expected to see. I like this. I like the Wu Yang and Kiriko backline here a little bit more than maybe what I expected with Lucio sticking here. But it's really working for them. And still, you're allowing Ewan to, I think, still play aggressively on a hero that can still do a lot of damage, even without having to play the Lucio here. That Wu Yang is already proven to be a very, very strong pick here for them, as they already have the Tidal Blast ready to go. But Zach trying to get in that backline.
Yeah, there's only so much utilization here. J-Man is going to be given it, though, honestly, just to stay alive, quite frankly. That is the tool. And now going to be in a weird situation down below, as first point I should say first cap has come through. You're trying to find a little bit more to get that second tick online. You love to close things out right here with the Kitsune Rush, and someone, i.e. Gap, is gonna have to drop down here, get a touch, and is not gonna be able to have that Nemesis form to be able to sustain for very long. So you're gonna see an utter collapse over onto Gap. It's gonna work out brilliantly, and Triplet is gonna double down here with the beat to secure this first point.
Yeah, one thing that I like, as that fight went on, you really started to notice there, especially with Triplet being able and Seaborn being able to build to their ultimates. Yeah, you're starting to see Amplify really rotate into all their ultimates right now, but because those engagements were really just brief engagements where one person would go and then fall back down, you're really starting to see Shikigami build up to their support ultimates a little bit faster than Amplify here. Yeah, Ewan swapping over now to the Lucio off the Wu Yang. I thought the Wu Yang did its job there on that first point, but Lucio now for the rest of the map is probably a better pick. But you're now looking at the other ultimates. Hero, Zac, Cave, about to come up to all their ultimates right now for Shikigami. That's going to be really strong, but you have no support ultimates now. Crazy Cat with that Kitsune Rush. That's going to be, I think, a fight-winning ultimate here for them if they put it in the right spot.
Yeah, we're going to see everything go through here. Oh, yeah, that is an investment. Zac and Hero don't really find anything, though. Triplet goes down. Seaborn, though, gets a nice little flick to kind of bring this one back in towards their favor. But now you don't have any supports, but still, you can't chase a whole lot because if you're Amplify, you need to stay safe.
Yeah, and that Sundering Blade, honestly not finding anything is kind of surprising. I mean, they had two members of Amplify stuck in the grab. The fact that he just didn't reach them, I think is the only reason they didn't end up using it now. But Hero try to take that space right back, and Gap actually give it to them. Understand they really cannot keep this fight going. Zac now trying to buy some space. That's what's going to be very scary here with this comp for Shikigami as a Kitsune Rush out here now from Crazy Cat.
Yeah, remember, Sundering Blade is going to be available here for Biz. Might not be necessary with Hero down. Another wipe going to come through here as they're going to be able to clean up. Crazy Cat does go ahead and invest the Kitsune Rush, which means they're not going to be able to answer for Seaborns that is right around the corner.
But I think you're okay with that, especially with what they have right now. You have Annihilation, you're going to have your own Sundering Blade, and you're going to have a beat. So you have stuff here to really deal with that Kitsune Rush when it comes out from Shikigami if you Amplify. But you still have to play smart here, and you played really smart that last fight, only investing the one ultimate. Now, though, as Shikigami comes right back in, you're going to have that, you're going to have the Overclock, you're going to have the Kitsune Rush. Those are two ultimates when paired together. Could really win you the fight here if you're out of spot, but Biz going for it all.
Yeah, he's able to try to kind of force Zac out a little bit. Zac's in a pretty awkward situation. Biz trying to protect their tank as best as possible, and to be fair, it's working out rather well as everyone just has to go back because Hero, unfortunately, died early on.
Again, a one-for-one trade there with ultimates. This is working out great now for Amplify as they're really being able to cycle through, while Shikigami, on the other hand, is kind of slow to build up their ultimates. Granted, once those ultimates get built up, they'll have 4 really good ones, but you're kind of wasting a time bank here, especially on a point which is so difficult to cap or get back to the cart after you start pushing up towards the point. You're going to have to go fast here now, which is seeming to be what Shikigami's doing. Yeah,
and Gap needs to get out alive right here. Ewan is playing very carefully. Annihilation going to be given. Ewan really wants to try to hold this for the beat, because without that, they are not surviving through this. It is just not going to happen. Triplet's going to be able to respond immediately back as well if they desire, but he's going to cut down to some of these ults coming online. Crazy Cat around the corner. Beats there. Ewan is going to pull it around the corner. Isn't going to catch over onto Biz, though. They're going to be pushed and likely to be wiped out, but everyone's going to go ahead and die over on the point at the very least. And that is 3 ultimates ultimately used there, and you're still going to get another fight if you're Amplify.
I mean, yeah, you are, but especially if you only leave one person on the cart here. But Zac has the ultimate ready to go here. That's Sundering Blade. Crazy Cat, J-Man gonna have their 2 ultimates, and Biz now make the swap over here over to the Vendetta as well. So there's gonna be a lot of touches coming out here. Amplify will be able to come back out here and get the touch. But I like what we're seeing here from Shikigami, pushing up. The Blade actually coming out there from Zac, not going to be able to find anyone. Kitsune Rush out there as a response, just trying to get back to the cart.
Yeah, Hero's incredibly low around the corner right now. They want to try to zone and maybe take care of business, and they will. They went the tank down. This is going to be next to impossible to pull back. Gabe is going to have to get an amazing shot here to get things going, but instead, they're going to have to back out, and the touch is, no one's really a good touch right now. Maybe Gabe.
It's going to be Triplet who's in the sky right now. They're going to be able to come back down, get a touch here. Kitsune or Overclock coming out here from J-Man, looking to end this round like they did last map.
Yeah, and it's looking like that's going to be the case right here. Maybe one more touch over on the side, but instead it's going to be the finish. Hero there on the Mao, going to get one more touch, but temporary as it will be. That's going to be a pretty good stop just before the second checkpoint. And honestly, if you're Amplify, you feel really good about that round, especially how well you managed to hold that corridor by the archways.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it worked out very well for you. The fact that you saw maybe a little bit of an overinvestment of ultimates there from Shikigami to try to get stuff going after they capped that first point, but you were able to kind of dodge him out of the way. I mean, we could go back to, I believe it was Cabe's Sundering Blade, where, I mean, you had the grab being invested there by Hero. You captured 2 people in it. But instead, they turned their head away from them and focused a little bit more on Gap instead. I understand going for the tank, but unless you didn't think you were going to be able to live long enough going after the 2 who were stuck in the grab, that could be something where you could really look back and say maybe that was the point there in that round where stuff started to get away there from Shikigami. But if you're Amplify, you're ecstatic about that. I thought they used their ultimates very, very well. They were using one at a time, and it worked out great for them in the end, especially as Shikigami, yeah, they did get through, were able to break through finally, but like I said, it's really hard to get stuff going after you lose 1 or 2 people on that push towards second point, and they lost the worst person they could have lost with Gap. The swap over there to the Malga just try to get back did not end up working out for them, as Shikigami just, I mean, as Amplify just did everything they needed to do there to shut it down. But now coming over here to the attacking side for Amplify, really surprised, and I'm not surprised at all to see Gap sticking with the Zarya. I think, or going back over to the Zarya here, I think, okay, Gap. Sticking with the Ramatra, I thought they played a really good Ramatra last round, especially against Hero, who really stuck on that Zarya, and I thought they did a good enough job, but you could start to see that there were moments there where the Zarya, not saying it was necessarily a linchpin in their struggles, but it seemed like they were focusing a little bit too much on throwing the bubbles on the cave, which granted, you want to do that since they're always trying to get in the middle of the fight on the Vendettas here. But you now look over at the other side, Biz showing up with a Vendetta of their own, as already Amplified trying to go through the hotel lobby. They're going to be able to do just that, but Zach shutting down J-Man.
Yep. It's going to be a rough shutdown early. Crazy Guy's going to have to just run into the abyss right there. And while Zach is low, unlikely to find a finish right here. They're separated. And this is just going to take more time because they're unlikely to make it out of this hotel. They might be able to rotate out with Zach on the other side, but they got to go somewhere. They're going to try to run down Zach, and now Seaborn's there. This could be dangerous. Everybody low, but they will have to fall back momentarily.
But look, everyone's on point right now. They're at least going to be able to get a tick here, because it would be, I think, it's not the smartest thing for Shikigami to try to engage on at this point right now. But now you see the re-engagement come out back from them, but it's going to be immediately a trade to get everything started. Yeah,
and Gap already getting rid of 2, and J-Man is going to be able to help shut this down as well. His first point going to be capped eventually. Plenty of time on the clock, 5:20 to go 109 meters, but in all fairness, everyone should be able to get in time to be able to fight over on this archway.
Yeah, but you already see what Amplify is doing here. They're taking that space. They're going to push up, try to make sure that archway is not necessarily the first fight here. They want to be going for that bookstore bar corner instead. That's where they want to. You do see Amplify coming back, or Shikigami come back out here very quickly, but they have no ultimates other than Blizzard from Zach, which, hey, if you're able to ice wall off a decent amount of the members of Amplify, you're going to get everything you want from it and more. Biz, though, barely getting out with their life here, but still, you needed something. You did not need that, though, if you're Shiki.
Yeah, he was on that big killing, and Zach is going to let that freeze go just to try to double down here and get something, but nobody actually gets frozen. It's going to be momentary relief. Hero is still incredibly low, only having triplet with the Lucio heals. You pretty much have to full sail out of this fight.
And that's exactly what they're doing, backing out as fast as their legs can take them, and whatever triplet speed boost can as well. You're seeing what they're coming up to here. Flux, Kitsune Rush, beat, Overclock. However, you look at the other side, J-Man kind of slow with their ultimate, but no one else over there for the side of Amplify is still as slow. You're going to have your beat. You're going to have the Annihilation, which I think for Gap is going to be huge, but you lose Biz early here, and how much more are we going to see Amplify stick in this fight?
We'll see what it is going to be, and eventually, yeah, they're going to have to eventually be forced out. Couple of later deaths, Biz the only one to be able to get out in that situation right there. But still, ultimates are going to be plentiful. All 5 going to be ready for Amplify.
All 5 going to be ready for Amplify, but we're in the same situation that we saw last round from Amplify on the defense side, where they only used one ultimate to win a fight, and hey, we only saw one ultimate come out there from Shikigami. Granted, it was a Kitsune Rush. You still have a beat, you still have Flux. I think the Flux is going to have to be used here very, very smartly, especially to counter out some other stuff. So whenever that Crazy Cat Kitsune Rush comes out, I would not be surprised if the beat is right there to try to slow it down.
Yeah, but Biz be given Cabe is in not a great spot, and Biz is going to try to double down, gets rid of Hero as well. It's just Seaborn and Zach alive. And with Biz cutting down another, Zach is so far back where Zach can't even touch. This thing should just be lock and keyed. Hero, Cabe are going to try to get back, but Dex, I think it's not even going to be a chance here.
There's gonna be barely, nope, not even a touch right there. And Amplify, after dropping the first map in what was a really good showing there for Shikigami, maybe the most dominant map so far of the night there. I mean, just great play all around. You saw the communication coming out there from Amplify. Everything was going their way, it seemed, and they just understood every situation, every fight. It really looked good. We talked about ultimate usage. We just talked about positioning and players really being able to find the most value there of it. I mean, looking at it right now, J-Man, we talked about it. They had a struggle map 1. Map 2, they got their footing. And map 3, the most elims in the lobby there by 4. The only person in the lobby with over 20 elims. This is a player that, like we said, once they get hot, very hard to shut down, but the rest of their team is really allowing J-Man to find those opportunities. Gap, I thought, had an amazing round there as well.
I think 100% did. And obviously we went into this map talking about, hey, both maps have been very competitive so far. This is the first one that, in all reality, really wasn't. This was the Amplify show on King's Row. And now, as we're getting set for Shikigami getting their last time to pick and ban, they're going to bring it over to Shambhala Monastery. But the important part, and I think this is one of the best picks they could have made, they're going to get rid of that Lucio, which is going to force Amplify to slow down, especially if you're doing that Zarya comp. That speed matters a lot.
Oh, absolutely. It really does, but I think it also maybe takes away something from your own side. As actually, no, I'm getting names mixed up here. It's a really good ban here, because we look at the other side. We always talked about how aggressive Ewan is on the Lucio. Getting rid of that here, especially going into a map like Shambhala Monastery, where there is that possibility for Lucio to kind of find a lot of value, just being able to be really aggressively on it, force that out. We've only really seen Ewan outside that play Wu Yang and I think a little bit of Juno. So there is other options for Ewan, but not necessarily as aggressive options, and maybe just a little bit more utilized options as well here. But a really important map here for Shikigami. What are they going to do? Are we going to see the Sigma come back out here? I feel like that's probably going to be the case. But right now, I'm looking at that DPS line here, honestly, for Shikigami to just kind of step up a little bit. That first map, where you can go back and look at it and watch it again, I feel like that DPS line really did a lot there for Shikigami. It shut down everyone on the side of Amplify. But right now, Zach and Cabe, they've kind of been quiet these last 2 maps. Hero has still been there doing a lot, but Zach and Cabe, you really want them to find their presence in this series again. Because if they don't, well, we'll be talking about Amplify potentially locking up a playoff spot after this map.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much 100% a reality if they manage to win this next map. But we'll have to see. Obviously, still waiting on the timer. Seaful could come in. Last time we saw Seaful come in, it was when Shikigami was kind of on the losing end of the equation. We'll see if that kind of duplicates in this scenario. But I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to double down with Hero, because Hero is still very reliable. But Gap, I think, is honestly, if you want to talk about like players that have improved the most over the course of the season, I think Gap's in that conversation. Gap's always been good, but I think they've become one of the big linchpins for this team right here, alongside someone like J-Man as well, who's come in here and, has made a really big difference. Obviously, not to say anything less about all the other players that are on here. Everyone has been playing out of their minds today, but I think it's really clear where that tank play is at for both sides. And with that being the case, we are going to see the double down here. The Symmetra is banned out.
Again, another good ban, I think, coming in for Amplify here. You get rid of Sim here. You get rid of a lot of potential kind of replacements as well for that Lucio ban coming out there. I mean, Sim TPs could get you onto the high ground on that first turn coming out of the spawn. It could get you onto that high ground going towards second point. It really negates a lot of that space. And it also really allows you to potentially, really allows Shikigami here to actually play something like the Sigma, where they found a lot of their value, or the most value, early on in this series. And this is definitely a map where Sigma does have their name kind of written all over it. However, you could still see Ramatra. You could still see a lot of other tanks come out here. Hazard, potentially, I feel like that's a hero we haven't necessarily seen at all tonight. This is definitely maybe, I think, a sleeper map for him, but I feel like we'll still see maybe a little bit more of Sigma come out here for both of these teams.
Yeah, I think we 100% will as well. I think it's been the most common tank realistically so far for both sides. Obviously, we've seen a little bit, obviously, with that Zarya gameplay earlier. But obviously, with it being slowed down without a Lucio, I think teams really are going to gravitate towards the Sigma. Now, obviously, without any speed, without any TPs, it's pretty much impossible for Shikigami to run their usual stuff in this situation. So they're going to have to figure out a different avenue to take this one away. But to be fair, we haven't been in an environment yet where we've seen these teams have to play on the slower side. You could still substitute the Juno in, which we saw earlier, back on Runasapi. I think that's still very much a possibility. In fact, I think it almost certainly is in the situation, at least for Shikigami. But we'll have to find out, as Shambali is, at least for attacking, could be a very unforgiving map.
Yeah, and speaking of Runasapi, let's go back and talk about the end of Runasapi.
Yeah.
I mean, Shikigami was essentially one fight win away from winning the map, putting them up 2-0 in this series. They lose that map off a couple great plays coming out from Crazy Cat and J-Man there to make sure that cap doesn't happen. I mean, we could be talking about this series in a completely different light right now if Shikigami was able to make that huge comeback, almost 100 meters, which I think they only ended up losing by 5. Amplify holding on by the skin of their teeth. Now, after that last map's performance, Amplify seems almost unstoppable. Shikigami, I think at least just for them coming into Shambali here, I think they just need to win the first fight. Doesn't matter what side they're on. They just need to win the first fight. Give them some confidence here, because this first point and second point on Shambali, I think are maybe some of the hardest points to cap on any escort map there is.
It's 100% one of the hardest things to deal with. I think in the world of Overwatch that we live in, obviously we look back in the day of the world of 2CP, where second point was one of the most difficult things to capture in the world. But I think...
Or the easiest thing to capture.
Or it depends. To be fair, it depends what iteration of Overwatch we're talking about. Back then, it was snowbally to all hell. It was bad. But I think if you're trying to bring in maps and talk about, hey, is there anything equivalent to that level anywhere close? Shambali 3rd is definitely on that level. That spawn is right there. When it comes to first point even, the attacker naturally has all the high ground in the world. It's pretty much impossible for at least for the attacking side, I should say, to have high ground. It's literally impossible. So you have to rely on rotations or ultimates to get you into a lot of these fights, which obviously is not an easy thing, especially those early fights where, guess what, Dex? You don't have ultimates to work with.
No, not at all. You really don't. However, I will say this, while we're kind of still yapping here and talking about all this stuff, there's just one player who's struggling to get into the lobby right now. Once they get in, we'll start this map. And right now, I mean, if you're Amplify, you're feeling really good. Like we said, barely won Runasapi by the skin of their teeth, and then really put down a masterclass on King's Row that, yeah, you could talk about a little bit more of a masterclass if they were able to hold Shikigami on the first point. But, I mean, you saw what they did on their attacking side, only really losing one fight. Maybe not even that. Amplify did exactly what they wanted to do there, and they did it very, very well. Shikigami, I mean, again, I'm looking at that DPS line. Like I said, you need them to kind of step up here because, I mean, Hunter, these last two maps, I mean, this last map, they only had 20 combined elims. I already talked about how J-Man had 22 on their own. You really need a little bit of a step up here from them. If you want to extend this series to 5, especially as we have talked about for Shikigami, this might be a little bit more of an important series for them to win here tonight, as a loss here would move them down to, I believe it's 6-6. And again, not necessarily saying that puts them with their backs against the wall the rest of the season, but definitely puts them close to that point.
Yes, it 100% will, and obviously it's a situation where this will not do them in by any means, but it's still really important to go in here and get a big win against a team like Amplify that, so far today, has been playing like a top 5 team. That's just the reality of the situation. Now, obviously, as we're seeing a little bit of fun going on there, as Ewan will go over towards that Wu Young Biz back over on that Vendetta we've seen a couple of times, but for Shikigami, they are going back essentially to square one here. Cave on that Bastion Seaborn is going to be speeding them in these scenarios. And to be fair, I don't hate this. They're trying to duplicate that success they had on map 1, and I do think it's possible even without the Symmetra.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible as well. But again, like I said, this DPS line here for Shikigami needs to step up. Cabe on this Bastion could definitely do that here, at least a little bit with the shotgun on, a lot of damage coming out. Zach, I feel like both Vendettas tonight necessarily haven't shown the best showing, but this could be a difference maker here. The Vendetta, whoever is able to get it going, could be the reason why their team either wins or loses this map here. Ewan without the Lucio in play, going back over to the Wu Yang, kind of like what we thought. Triplet also doing the exact same thing here, but other than that, no big swaps as Cave finding the value here early. Hunter, this is exactly what I said they needed to do, win this first fight, and they're already off to a good start.
Yeah, 100%, that is what they're doing, and that's what they're going to accomplish right here. Cave already having a world of a difference, has already gotten rid of 2, and I mean, this first half right here is going to be taken care of so incredibly quickly, as Amplify just have to bounce out of there.
No one ever expects the flanking bash, and that's exactly what Cabe was able to do right there, at least to be able to get rid of Gap. Now, if you're Amplify, not necessarily the best start, you're seeing Gap give up the Omnic, going over to the Russian Powerlifter instead here. I like this a little bit better for them. Hero, though, you already see the space being taken by Zach and Triplet here. Zach actually pulling 3 members away, but Ewan's going to be able to find them here. Not what you were looking for, honestly, if you're Shikigami, and look at what that does to them. They just say, hey, we really can't do this now. We have to back up. That's how important the Vendetta is to this composition that Shikigami's running.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do in that situation. Obviously, Triplet got to run for it. Is going to be able to be alive momentarily. It's very much stuck in the corner, but we'll be able to get out alive. And now 2/3 left over on the clock. Ultimate's not of a concern to either team so far. You're getting kind of close with support ultimates on both sides, but unless this fight goes on for a long time, this is going to be another neutral fight.
Abe, though, already trying to pop Gap's bubble, gonna be able to right there, but you're already seeing it be cleaned up here now for Shikigami. Biz will fall. Last one left alive is Ewan, and Ewan, well, they'll group up with the rest of their team back in those second point spawns. And this is exactly what you're looking for here if you were Shikigami. Like I said, this first point, very difficult to lose, or very difficult to cap, especially if you're the attacking team and you lose a fight around the point where they basically were after they lost Zach. They did the right thing, though, backed up and came right back in once they got Zach. It worked out great for them here. However, this second point, a little bit harder, because once you lose a fight, you have to deal with that giant high ground disadvantage. Triplet and Zach again on the off angle here. I like this play from them as the rest of Shikigami try and set up on the path that the cart is going to be going, as you see the rest of Amplify also go that way as well.
100% you will, and now that card's going to be really hard to stop in this situation, but Ewan is going to go all out aggressive right here. Gets rid of Cave single-handedly, and the supports are going to keep things going. Unfortunately, not going to work out as well for Triplet. And while you were going to start pushing back and forth, Gap does die in the process, which honestly is a bit important because Gap can't get sped back, and Gap is way back there. In fact, it's going to use the ball to get back.
Almost a little bit of a desperation swap right there, especially with where Amplify is. They're kind of in no man's land. Same thing, though, could be said for Shikigami as they wait for Zach to get back. But look at the ultimates coming online here on both sides. This is going to be a pretty heavy fight. Biz, though, finding Triplet out early. A huge pick there for Amplify, as it actually, again, forces Shikigami just to fall back. Shikigami playing, I think, so far very smart. Not necessarily wanting to go in these fights down anybody. I like that from them here, especially on a map that could be very, very important for them in the long run here for the rest of the season. Gap, though, on this Wrecking Ball, I almost feel like they are now stuck on this Wrecking Ball here, but it could end up working out for them. Cabe, though, kind of marking them as much as they could, as you do see Gap coming, crashing right down to earth.
Yep, and Biz gonna try to find a little more success with this Sundering Blade. Everybody gonna be able to hide away from it. We could have the Vendetta 1v1 as Zach realistically trying to run for it, but here we go. The Flux is going to be online. Everything being thrown in. J-Man is basically going to be soloed away. And with all of that care coming through, it's going to be so tough to pull back here, even with that Kitsune Rush. Seaborn wants to try to close this one out, though. Crazy Guy thinks it still may be possible. J-Man might be able to come back at them, especially if Gap is able to stall out a little while longer. But Hero is getting incredibly low, but has all the heals in the world going their way. It's just down to Gap to kind of stop this, stall this as much as humanly possible. J-Man is, again, going to have to be a hero for this fight, as waiting for potential opening. So many people low. Cabe has gone down, and with that being the case, I don't think you can try to win this fight anymore for Shikigami.
You can now if you're Shikigami. You're just trying to get out alive, but losing Triplet right there, you're trying to figure out, is it just smart to try to fall back, or do we just take, you know, a little bit of a cliff dive here and see and just regroup at spawn? Looks like you're going to have Hero and Zach just fall right back. Biz, though, playing up very, very far, and now this is the worst case scenario, I think, for Shikigami. Like I said, this second point, very hard to get back to, especially after you lose the cart uphill, because you have to try to find a way back up the hill. You don't have to worry about Lucio booping you off the map this time around, though, as you already do see Shikigami rotating around the outside of the map. Mine's out, though, but I honestly don't think that's going to be much of a problem here for Shiki.
No, that essentially does nothing. But Triplet still dies anyway, so it's kind of fine. And Zach's in a situation can't drop directly down, so it's going to have to go kind of a long way here. Minute 20 left on the clock. Remember, they had 5 minutes and 20 seconds when they capped that first point.
Again, I talked about it. This is a hard point to cap, especially after you lose the cart, lose momentum. But you're looking at the ultimates that Shikigami's coming up to here. You have Sundering Blade, you have Orbital, you have your Tidal Blast, you're going to have Flux here. You're in a good spot, but you really have to start playing a little bit faster here for Shikigami, because you cannot allow Amplify to build up to all the ultimates that they're about to build up to here, especially that Tidal Blast from Ewan.
Yeah, you have to try to find somebody like a J-Man who's going to drop into the back line It's going to be way behind. It's probably going to get blasted away momentarily and will be gone. Gap going to be back for one more touch, but J-Man does get a post-mortem kill. But unfortunately, without Gap there, I don't think it's realistically going to be enough. You have a little stall with the Tidal Blast. Body's getting a little bit low. Biz is back over into the fight as well. Flux, though, is going to pull everybody momentarily. Yuin is staying up. Hero, though, more than happy to get rid of Biz, trying to take bodies down. And with Cade back into the fight, this thing feels like a slowly but surely win here for Shikigami as Gap eventually gets taken down.
J-Man could be the last one to touch there, but it's not going to be in time. However, if you're Amplify, I think you're honestly okay with that fight there. Yeah, you would have loved to be able to stop Shikigami there, but look at what you got out. Orbital, Deadeye, Flux, Tidal Blast, all gone. The only thing that's left are the Sundering Blades for both sides, but you're going to be a little bit closer to having your Kitsunos ready to go here if you're Amplified. So right now, you're actually in a little bit of a favorable spot. Gap needs to be able to take a little bit of space here. However, you need to come right back in. Once Crazy Cat gets that Kitsune Rush, you have to try to win this cart fast because, again, this is such a hard map to push through. And this third point, once you get around the spot where the cart is right now, it's actually kind of difficult for the attacking team to get back, especially with how we see in the past Amplify be aggressive, but you lose your aggressive support player early.
Yeah, and you're going to see that little bit of aggression being thrown back into the corner. Everybody in there. Biz barely can't finish off Cave, though, and that is a devastating one to not be able to finish off, but I think losing out on Seaborn, still trying to get Hero fully back into this one and healed up, I think at the very least it stems the bleeding.
Keep dropping back though, but this was the worst case scenario for them. You do not want to allow this Amplified team, who's very aggressive, to take space. And J-Man, again, they've been kind of quiet this map. The fact that they're now starting to find some picks is not what you want to be seeing here if you're Shikigami. 30 seconds left to go. You're going to have Flux. You're going to have Tidal Blast ready to go. But look at the other side. Still holding on to the overclock. Still holding on, most importantly, to that Kitsune Rush. Again, I think a lot of these fights here are potentially what could be final fight here really hinges on how much value comes out of that Kitsune Rush from Crazy Cat.
Oh my god, and Zach doesn't get the Tidal Blast in time, so now you might see a level of all-out aggression here because someone's going to have to touch, but there's not a perfect person to even touch this point, so Hero is going to have to save those cooldowns, eventually move up to be able to get the initial touch, but Kitsune Rush comes through here. He's going to have to force with the Tidal Blast to get the point touch. It will come through. Cave somehow falls to their own right, but two can be thrown up into the air. Hero clearing out bodies. This is going to be the full team wipe, but they used what they had available at the time right here, so the battle to get these support ultimates online is so crucial.
Ewan's going to have that Tidal Blast ready to go here, and I think that's going to be very important for them. Gap, though, they could be looking for a Sig 9 here, which is something we don't see very often, but that overtime wick, that's going to burn down pretty fast. Seaborn needs to build up to this orbital ray fast, but a last-second touch by Biz to at least slow it down. There's the Flux.
Yep, catches over onto Hero, but Hero's still playable to work with, and you're going to see if they're going to start pushing through Cave. All the damage in the world, and while they don't touch, it sucks, but honestly, I think they probably nailed that right then and there. Cave had all the damage in the world, all the healing in the world with the orbital ray. That would have been really tough to win regardless.
Hero never died.
Oh my god, somehow.
Hero never died. I mean, I talked about it a lot, how it always seemed like Shikigami was very... it was very smart that round. They didn't necessarily put themselves in fights that they're at any disadvantage at. They always kind of played back, but you have to remember, Hero was the touch going into that overtime round there. Normally, you expect the person who's the touch to die, but great plays from the supports there for Shikigami to really make sure you keep your tank alive, who was vitally important in a lot of the fights that map. But one thing I came into this map talking about, the DPS line for Shikigami, they really needed to step up. Well, they did there. Cabe and Zach combining for 29 elims. That's already more than what they had last map. Exactly what you wanted there from this. And again, this Bastion has worked out very well. It is giving Amplify some problems here. Yeah, they're able to slow it down a little bit later in the map as it gets a little bit more defensive-sided. But you have to now worry about this Bastion here again on this first point if you're Amplify, because you need someone to shut it down. Is it going to be J-Man? Is it going to be Gap? Is it going to be Biz? It's going to be really difficult for them, but Gap coming back out here on the Sigma kind of tells you where this series has kind of been going here, especially since we talked about Zarya being really a good tank right now. We saw Zarya very briefly for a moment there from Amplify last round. Not going to see it at all, I think, this round.
I don't think so either. And obviously, we'll see, but Cabe over on this Bastion, like I said before, it's going to be so difficult to deal with right here. But this is where you have to rely on people like Biz and J-Man, even Ewan to really, honestly, everybody on this team to poke away, keep Gabe at bay as much as humanly possible. That is what you have to do here. It's going to be easy, no, but it is very doable, especially as you're stalling out this card. You're going to get Zach incredibly low, has a shield up, is going to get full health as well. But for the time being, you are fine doing this, especially with Crazy Cat gone here, Dex. This is going to be rough to deal with because they have to put themselves basically in the fire to even put somebody at risk's way, as Zach ends up being caught out and taken down.
Yeah, Zach was put into a very small room with 3 or 4 members of Amplify right there. And if you're Shikigami right now, losing Zach, even though you find Ewan, I think you're doing the right thing. Just back out. Hero now taking this 1v1 on this high ground here against Gap. Looks like they're going to be able to come out on top there. But you see the cart slowly moving. And Shikigami, I think, is okay with it moving because it actually puts Amplify in a little bit of a worse spot here as you start to see Biz go after Seaborn.
Yeah, Biz will get out alive as well as trying to slowly chip away further and further, but first ultimate is probably, of all people, going to be probably Cave, maybe Ewan, but Cave isn't going to have a ton of utilization for that ult anyway. For Ewan, it could be an aggressive tool to send somebody in like Biz to get in there and really be able to disrupt somebody like Cave. We'll find out momentarily if that's going to be the case, though. There's a nice knock there right there with that accretion. Takes Zach out of the sky, but he's going to be taken care of, kept alive. Hero incredibly low with the flux. Isn't going to be able to get it out in time to do anything, and this is where you can start to move forward if you're amplifying. With Cave gone, it's all but a certainty.
Zach finding 1 here, though.
Wait,
they're
what?
looking for a little bit more. Zach finding 2. Zach finding 3. Zach somehow, some way, dragging and kicking and screaming Shikigami into this one here. They'll eventually fall, but they did exactly what they needed to do there. They found some picks on the way out. Triplet going to be able to escape with their life, and because there's only 2 people on cart, Amplify is not going to be able to get a lot of progress here. It's going to allow Shikigami to come right back in and be in a very good spot. No ultimates used from both sides, Hunter. This could be a pretty heavy ult fight here. 10 ultimates, maybe, but I'm looking more at 6 coming out from each side. The flux from Hero might be the first one to see come out, but no, it's going to be Triplet instead, giving that title blast out to Zach.
Yeah, but J-Man gets it directly back to be able to stay alive. Zach flying around, Triplet gonna be the first one gone right here. J-Man still has plenty to invest here. Crazy Cat as well, but it looks like it might not be necessary. Hero going to be separated from the rest of the team. Zach, last one available, but it's just going to preserve the life, get out of there alive. 3:45 on the clock. Plenty of time to work with here. But you do see the ult economy and how much of a difference it's going to be for the next minute or two.
I was a little wrong with how many ultimates would be used here, but hey, Amplify did use 3, and they used 3 very well. I thought all the ultimates they used there were honestly the right time to use them. You look at the other side, though, Shikigami is going to be in a very good spot here. Thundering Blade, Flux, Artillery, and their own Orbital Ray. I think they're in a good spot here just to be able to hold this second point, because again, this is a very hard one to push on if you lose a fight here, if you're the attacking side. Damage, though, coming out here from Crazy Cat early.
Yeah, you're going to see a Flux being thrown in there as well by Hero. Doesn't get a whole lot out of it. In fact, nobody even close to going down. Gap eventually going to be burnt down, though. And with Gap gone, I mean, there's next to nothing you can do in the situation. Unless, of course, your name is Biz and you get rid of 2 and you fly out to the back line. And now you have to worry about both sides attacking you. J-Man, he's got to back out a little bit, but they have them pincered right now.
They have them pincered, but like, you're going to eventually see Hero fall here. You would hope to see Hero fall here, honestly, if you're Amplified, but yeah, there they go. They finally do fall. Is that going to be able to find 1 on their way out, though? But still, if you're Shikigami, you're in a spot here where you can come out with ultimates and be able to contest this card. The artillery from Cave is going to probably be used here almost immediately once you see Shikigami try to come out here and contest it, just to be able to buy some time, get some members off the cart from Amplify. Zach, the Sundering Blade, is ready for them here. I don't think it necessarily needs to find any picks. It just needs to be able to section off some people, zone out a little bit. But J-Man and this overclock, they already find 1. It might be time for them to pop off.
Yep, and popping off is 100% what they're doing. I mean, you still have Cave and Hero hanging around, but it's just not going to be enough here. Now, you're going to have 3.5 minutes going into this last point. And remember, it was a struggle before for Amplify to hold on for as long as they did. But now with 3.5 minutes, ult advantage probably going to come to form here. They're looking pretty good.
Really good, and Shikigami, whatever momentum we thought they had after that first round, it's kind of all gone now. Amplify showing us exactly the same kind of play that we saw on King's Road, just casually being able to take fight after fight. The smart play that we saw there from Shikigami almost gone there, as yeah, they're still playing smart, they're backing out fights when they need to, but they cannot really afford to do that anymore here. Zach, though, still holding on to Thundering Blade, but you're about to see all 5 ultimates ready to go here for Amplify.
Yeah, and Hero is in no man's land, unfortunately. He's going to get taken care of by Ewan, and now J-Man is trying to cause a separation. Everybody in a weird area. J-Man going to be forced back, but picks are going pretty back and forth. Zach and Triplet are alive still, and they should be able to re-aggress here momentarily as soon as you're able to get Hero back out there.
Yeah, the fact that Zach and Triplet are able to get out is huge here for Shikigami, especially as you still look over at the other side. 3 ultimates ready to go. You're going to have 3 ultimates ready to go here for Shikigami. Do all 3 ultimates come out? Amplify, though, going to give up some space here. They have the time bank. They don't necessarily have to rush into any fights here that they don't feel like are favorable for them here. So now you're going to give that time, allow Shiki actually get set up. I think it actually works out a little bit better for them, especially knowing where Cabe is, because we've talked about Cabe is a problem as a title blast out on the both Vendettas.
Yeah, and it's going to work out really well there as Cap is basically going to get solo. By the way, that car is slowly moving forward. Cabe in such an awkward situation. And it's weird right now. Hero's trying to stay alive right now. Zach has a bit of an investment ready. J-Man, unfortunately, going to get hit with the accretion. That's going to stem the bleeding once more. Fight comes to an end. 2 minutes still on the clock here. And still a pretty substantial amount of ultimates available here for both sides, really.
Absolutely, but 3 ultimates are going to be ready here for Shikigami. You use Flux, you use Tidal Blast. You still have to deal with the Tidal, you still have to deal with the Flux here from Gap, so you're really almost looking at Hero here to be able to cancel that out essentially with an accretion. Crazy Cat, though, that Amatrix might be a little bit of a sleeper one here. If they can get off into a really good spot, allowing J-Man to find the value with it, it could be lights and curtains here for Shikigami in this defense round.
Yeah, and Zach kind of being pushed over to the side right now, and here comes Cabe going for the investment. Is going to throw up into the air, and the accretion's going to hit, knocked out of it. Cabe not going to really find any receipts. Just going to try to go back and get rid of something. Unfortunately, nobody down from either side yet. And to be fair, you don't hate this in this situation if you're Shikigami. Let this fight go on for as long as possible. The problem is, ultimates are no longer a factor right here. With Cabe getting hit with the accretion, they're taken care of. It's going to have to be a clutch up right here, as Hero needs to stay alive, and J-Man might be the hero once again here, about to have that overclock online ready to go. In the back line right now is Zach, who's incredibly low, doesn't get out alive. And now Hero needs all the healing in the world. Zach still having, or J-Man still having the overclock right now, and this could go genuinely either way.
In the back line.
Oh no! J-Man gets taken out by Triplet, and now less than 2 meters to go, but it might not be enough. It's going back and forth. It's just Gap and Blizz hanging around, trying to get these touches. It's just one remaining. Gap trying as hard as they might. They won't be able to do it, and now somebody needs to figure out a touch.
Who's it going to be? Who's going to make the swap over here for Amplify to get back here in time? You have the Flux ready to go right now. If you're Shikigami, you're in a really good spot. But look at what else they're coming to. Tidal Blast. You had to use that last fight there to just keep them alive. J-Man looking for the touch. Gonna be, I think, able to get it.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't think Crazy Cat expected J-Man to get the touch there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly,
so
yeah. Go ahead.
So definitely an accidental one. They thought J-Man died before the touch came out. But Shikigami, they did everything here. So they're gonna have to get Crazy Cat back in just to finish the map. But like Shikigami, we talked about a lot. Not necessarily season hopes on the line here, but a loss does hurt them a little bit, but they played this map perfectly. This 3.5-minute hold here on defense on this third point was, I think, almost perfect. I mean, yeah, there's mistakes here and there, but I mean, I talked about it a little bit when Gap had their last Flux. Here, I specifically said Hero needs to be able to cancel this out, or else it could be curtains for this round for them, and maybe map. But they hit it. They got rid of that. They got rid of a huge ultimate there for Amplify, and Amplify just wasn't ever able to come back into it. However, unfortunately, I'm staring at the cart, so I don't know where anyone else for Amplify is, if there could be even a chance for a touch coming out here.
It's not possible. Gap is still like back like by second checkpoint. Ewan maybe, but it at this point it's a formality. We'll be in for 5 seconds. The map will end, and we should head to a 5th map. That should be without any question. But they have to get Crazy Cat back in there because it can only sit here for so long. Because if I'm gonna double check on the page right now, yeah, there's no kind of timeout or anything being used. So yeah, Crazy Cat's back.
Crazy Cat.
Yeah, this should just be a quick little 5-second in and out.
But hey, again, Shikigami, they did everything they needed to do here. They brought us to this map. I think they made some really good. They made a really good ban coming on this map. I believe, if I remember correctly here, or let me just look over at the page. They made the Lucio ban here. And especially with how we talked about Ewan playing that Lucio, how they love to play Lucio very aggressively, it has really helped out Amplify here a lot this series. I mean, you could go back to the first map of this series where Ewan, in a losing effort, had the most elims for Amplify playing specifically Lucio. So they are very, very scary on that character. Getting rid of it here, again, maybe a pick you want to leave for map 5, but you needed to make it here, and it ends up working out. Shikigami, whenever Crazy Cat actually gets back in, we're going to be able to go to a map 5.
Yeah, that's the route this is gonna go down. But obviously, Crazy Cat, I think was in momentarily. I'll go ahead and send it back to us for a minute because I'm gonna double check some shenanigans. Are they back in the lobby? Okay, yeah, Crazy Cat is back in the lobby. But I think with the way it went down, I think an admin might have to come in and personally unpause the match just so they can get in for 5 seconds. I believe.
I can't, I can't unpause.
I
Oh. Oh, we're so close. They were so close. You just needed that accretion just to hit a little bit a moment earlier.
Man, that's
But
rough.
hey, Hunter, I mean, we came into the night talking about how these two teams are really close in standings, really close in just players and their skills as well. We really expected this one could go to 5, and Shikigami gonna be able to do that here as both teams are trying to figure out how to unpause.
Oh, they're doing it.
There it is.
Hey,
They
let's
did it.
go. All right, we're heading right back into the action, ladies and gentlemen, and the map is over. And we are headed to map 5. A little anticlimactic, all things considered, but we're still going the distance, we'll say.
Yeah, we're going the distance. Definitely not going for speed anymore.
Nope.
As that one is way past gone here. But again, excellent performance here from Shikigami. Again, what did I say coming into this map, Hunter? What did Shikigami really need to do? Well, it was that DPS line. They needed to step up. They had kind of been quiet these last 2 maps where they lost. Well, Hunter, 54 combined kills for them this map, really stepping up when they absolutely needed to. And Hero, we had the kind of back and forth talks of, hey, do we bring Seaful in here? Does Shikigami bring Seaful in here to try to maybe give them a spark? Hero, I think, maybe played the best map of this series so far. Least amount of deaths in the lobby. I can't tell. I don't know how many times Crazy Cat died because the stats have reset for them, but only 4 deaths. For Hero. I mean, we talked about no deaths after that first round. They played incredibly well. Shikigami, that was a really good map for them. They calmed down, it really seemed, and really forced Amplify into stuff that just bothered them. And I think Cabe, back on that Bastion, was a huge difference maker for them.
It was a massive difference being in that situation. Being able to have that, it is such a reliable thing in situations like this. And now, as we kind of go the full distance in a game like this, it's going to come down to which team is kind of being able to kind of, honestly, the mistakes that the teams have made haven't even been like major mistakes. We've seen like a couple of silly things happen here and there, but this has mainly been a war of attrition between these two sides, trying to find out how do we beat this specific composition. And eventually, Shikigami was able to figure out, despite not having some of their better pieces, to be able to make that happen. And now, as we have our 5th map set up here, we're going over to Suravasa. We saw that the first ban was the Sigma, but the second ban, I think, is extremely interesting, and honestly, I love this ban, honestly.
Yeah, Sigma coming out here from Amplify, I think makes a lot of sense. We have been seeing Hero get a lot of value off this pick, off this Hero all night long. It really makes a good sense, especially because you want to try to force them into something that maybe they're a little bit less comfortable on. Do they go back over to the Ramatra? Do they try to mirror the Zarya here? That's going to be really interesting. Juno, though, I feel like Juno, both teams have been using Juno a lot throughout the night, maybe a little bit more than me and you expected to see here, but it has definitely been a difference maker. And you could really look back at last map for Shikigami. The orbital rays really were pivotal in a lot of engagements there for them to get them either over the hump or get them into the fight. Really, really good. Put them in a spot to definitely excel and win it there. So smart bans coming out here as we head into map 500 for me and you the first time this year.
Yeah, legitimately. I'll be honest. I love all the teams we've covered so far, but a lot of them have been really quick ones, all things considered. We've had a couple of close ones in there, but as of map 5, yeah, it's the first one, and I am really excited for it because I can't tell you who's going to win this. I don't even have like an odds-on favorite to win this one. It feels so back and forth, and now when you have 2 characters that have been, by the way, so critical in pretty much every single map with the Sigma and the Juno being taken out, I don't know which way teams are going to go. But to be honest right here, remember the fact that the Sigma is now gone and the Juno is taken out of rotation, the Symmetra's available, the Lucio's available, the Bastion's available, the Zarya's available. I'm just saying Shikigami might literally try to run back a map 1 style thing because it worked out really well, and I know they did have the Sigma for that before, but there's no reason why it can't work with the Zarya.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and you have to compare Flashpoint to Control, which again, that is a map that Shikigami won. And you could really go back and look at it and say, yeah, it was back and forth. But Shikigami, after that first point, I thought they played second point really well, really shut down Amplify on all angles. And again, I feel like Amplify was maybe playing a little bit of a weirder comp because we saw Hanzo come out from Amplify there and J-Man, and we haven't seen Hanzo since, maybe for that reason where J-Man really struggled that first map there. And we talked about it, how essentially a lot of stuff that Amplify does, you could really contribute to how that DPS line is playing. And we have highlighted J-Man a lot throughout this series, but Biz last map on that Vendetta, I think you really started to find the value with it. I talked about both Vendettas that we have seen from both these teams really struggled at times throughout this series. And even going back to Kings Row where it was a stomp, I don't think the Vendettas were necessarily that good. I think Biz actually did a really good job on Vendetta. It just didn't necessarily get the result they were looking for here. But hey, heading into our 5th and definitely final map, because if you somehow tie a Flashpoint map, I would be absolutely amazed. But again, if you're Shikigami here, you force the map 5, you're looking for a little bit of luck to go your way. But Hunter, one thing I briefly touched on at the start of this series, let's go all the way back to Season 5, when this team was known as Shikigami Midori. Playoffs for them, well, it was nothing but map 5s. This is a team that has some history with them. They got rid of the curse then, looking to make sure that curse is still gone right now. Looks like it's going to be Zarya's for both teams. Symmetra's going to be there for both teams, at least at the start. I would not be surprised if we see both of them go right back over to the Vendettas, as that's been the way to go here. And without the Juno there, I kind of thought we would see this from the support lines. Lucio, Kiri. I thought maybe we could potentially see a Brig come out here. I thought that could be something we see one of these teams play, especially if one of them is going to go back over to a Vendetta. But if it stays like this, I think these are two very good compositions. But the Vendetta's actually coming out for both sides here. Cave and J-Man on this Sojourn battle, I think is going to be really, really fun to watch throughout this entire map, Hunter.
Yeah, I think this is one of the first times we've had a full, complete mirror to get a map started. And we'll see how well it's going to work out. Again, I think it's going to be a big war of attrition as Hero and Gap already getting up a ton of charge. And Gap is already struggling a lot to stay alive. Is going to be forced out. Is point going to be online here for Shikigami. Gap's got to be to full health if you even want to consider contesting this point in any realistic way. You get a touch at the last second to be able to try to force Gap out. But J-Man gets rid of 2 in the fight. And now is going to pull this one back around. Hero has to back out. And while J-Man is getting some care, this first point should be all but secured. Hero is going to be able to get rid of 1, but eventually taking care of. J-Man gets rid of 4 in the fight, by the way. And so you're going to see Cave run for the hills.
Yeah, and right now, if you're Cave, you're just trying to get out as fast as you possibly can. But again, a good kind of fight there. J-Man, again, we talked about the DPS lines for both sides really need to step up. J-Man find those first 2 kills are there. Goes a long way now for them here in this round. And yeah, you got the 12% there if you're Shikigami, and you'll take that. You gladly will. But look, J-Man, Crazy Cat already over 75% of the way to their ultimates, Hunter. We can see those ultimates come out almost instantly once they have them ready.
Yeah, you 100% can, and now it's 60% on the board already. This is Final Fight Tier already, and if Crazy Cat is able to get this online, you hit that trigger immediately. You do not hold back, because you realize, hey, we have this first. We need to be relentless in this approach, and with them right around the corner, you're going to have it. Someone's going to have to touch, and there's not going to be a support response, at least momentarily. Seaborn is at 80% right around the corner, but here comes that Simi rush down, and Zach has already taken away that first blood, trying to go back and forth as Triplet, not able to sustain through, but Hero being taken care of means you lose out on all of that precious damage, and eventually, fight will come to a close. First one gonna head over to Amplify.
Yeah, Amplify gonna be able to get that there. It's huge for them. It really is. Actually, yeah, it's going to be huge for them. Just because, and you use the Kitsune Rush there if you are them, and the other side didn't really use anything because they really didn't have anything. J-Man could have honestly used the overclock, but they were the first one to die before that Kitsune Rush even came out. So they're now going to have that ready to go with the beat from Ewan. It puts, I think, Amplify in a really, really good spot here. Shikigami, though, they're coming up to all their ultimates. That grab from Hero, that's going to be very, very important for them this fight if they decide to use it, because it's going to force out a lot of stuff from the other side.
Yeah, Biz is going to go down early. There is a grab available. Gap, though, might be able to go down naturally. Is going to be in weird cover. Is J-Man going to try to pull this one back around? Grab is available. There's so many low bodies. Hero doesn't pull the trigger, though. Instead, is just going to opt to be able to take the point without it. Gap will be able to get alive as well. And that is a good call there from Hero to just naturally cap the point.
Yeah, and honestly, good calls there by both teams. The Kitsune Rush came out there from Shikigami, Amplify backed up. J-Man used the overclock right there, and I don't think Shikigami really put themselves in a bad spot. The grab, though, out. Yeah, at least force out the beats and you win.
Oh, you love to see it. Zach with the combination. We don't see it all the time. You figure you would, but you don't, and it's Cave helping finish bodies off. That's going to be the fight one right there, and it's a double investment, but to be fair, I think that's worth it.
Very much worth it here, but now the thing you're gonna have to really worry about coming into this next engagement here for Shikigami is the grab ready for Gap and Biz. They have their own Sundering Blade, so you could see that combo come out there from them. Worked very well for Shikigami, so they know they have to be ready for it, but Triplet does have that beat ready to go here. And a lot of this fight, I think, hinges on when that beat is used. Is it used once the grab comes out or once that Sundering Blade gets thrown? I think it's gonna be very important now. The grab, though, from Gap, you're gonna have to watch out for it here, as it seems like Amplify trying to play it smart here, patiently wait for an engagement.
Yeah, but 3 are going to be in there right now. Not a ton of damage to work with right now. No one can be burnt down immediately. Biz, though, is going to catch the business end of Zach. But still, Hero is alive. Point is going to flip at the very least, but with Gap slowly starting to clear things around, you wonder how long this is going to go on for. Hero eventually going to lose out on the 1v1. Gap stays alive, keeps all of that delicious charge as Amplify going to take back over.
I think Hero wanted to actually get onto the point there to try to contest, but they were a millisecond too late. And I think that might actually come back to bite them here a little bit. Crazy Cat, though, does have the Kitsune Rush ready to go, but you look over at the side of Shikigami, they have nothing. Especially on Flashpoint, you have to build up something here very quickly. Seaborn should be able to build up their own Kitsune Rush, but you already see Crazy Cat investing theirs.
Yeah, everyone's going to run, try to get back into the spawn. You lose out on Triplet, which is honestly not the worst case scenario. You still got to fight in Hero. Hero keeps all this amazing charge. You get another fight reasonably, and Seaborn should have this Kitsune Rush momentarily.
And now Shikigami's put themselves into a really good spot here with this Kitsune Rush, but they need to make their way towards point. I love what we're seeing here from Amplify. They're taking the space. They're trying to force Shikigami into a spot where they have to rush. They cannot necessarily have a moment here to really game plan, but you're seeing them slowly back up now. That Kitsune Rush from Seaborn had to come out here eventually because Gap will be able to build up to that grab here pretty soon.
Yeah, it's what it's going to come down to, honestly, to pull this one back around. You get Blizz incredibly low, still going to be alive. I think points going to have to be given over with a flip momentarily, but someone has got the touch. It's probably going to have to be Biz. Goes in there. Grab around the corner, but Hero is going to get it off first right there. Biz trying to block away. Unfortunately, nothing going to be available. Gap 96% around the corner. He's going to get bubbled away and isn't going to be able to finish it off. Triplet is going to be there to shut things down, and it's going to be a 1-1 competition. It's back and forth. Lots of ultimates being used before, but works out brilliantly for Shikigami.
It really does there, and that's, I think Shikigami in that moment right there, once Amplify lost Biz, they were okay to saying, hey, we're gonna give Gap some charge here. We just gotta melt these bubbles down right away, because this entire fight hinges on how long Gap's able to stay alive. But you now look at Amplify here. They have Overclock, they have Grab, they're gonna have Beat, they're gonna have Sundering Blade if this fight goes long, which it probably will here. Shikigami, on the other hand, really only has Sundering Blade and potentially an Overclock. I don't really expect to see any of those ultimates come out here unless Zach really believes they can find a pick with one, with their Sundering Blade.
Yeah, and remember, with this grab, there is no support ultimates online. It's going to be thrown in. 3-4 bodies in there. And lucky to survive as anybody as J-Man helps Gamer to 3 with the combination of the grab. So once again, Amplify going to take over the point first right here. And that's just textbook right there.
It's textbook, but look at Amplify now with their ultimate. They still have Beat. They're going to have everything but Grab. They put themselves into a good spot where, if you go back to Kings Row, we've seen both these teams use one ultimates to win team fight after team fight before. That's something they need to do here now if they want to be able to win the map and the series here. Overclock coming out from Cave. If they can find one, it goes a long way.
Yeah, but Ewan doesn't hit the ground in time. J-Man gets taken out. Zach is now forced into a 1v1 where they're going to try to get out. Will be able to do so. And now it's the investment from Biz. Once to get somebody, unfortunately, all it's going to do is kind of stall and try to get your fifth back in time to have a reasonable fight here. But unfortunately, I don't know how doable that is. Zach has the Sundering Blade too. You might be able to force one more touch, but with 68%, you have to give it up for the moment.
I like the slight give up here, right here from Amplify. It's going to force Shikigami in spots they don't really want to be in, but now Kitsune Rush out, so is the Sundering Blade, but Zach not going to be able to find anything.
And that's rough, and now you're losing body after body. Hero and Seaborn not going to be able to get a whole lot here. We're getting close to the ultimates, but now with 68%, you need to hurry and get your way back into this fight because this is going to be a tough touch.
it's going to be a tough touch, but you look at it here. Amplify doesn't have any ultimates here. You have to find a way to touch the point right now if you are Shikigami, because you are going to be in a spot here where if you're able to find that touch, you're going to have the ultimate advantage. But look at Amplify. They're playing aggressively. They're doing everything right.
Yeah, but I think that's Triplet back there who got the touch on the point, and everybody's kind of low right now. You're going to get a pick as well, so now you're going to start moving in. You get the cap, and with the fact that people kind of went back and forth, you're going to see this thing start going away as Gap going to be finished off, and somehow, some way, they make it happen.
They make it happen. Gap, though, for Amplify, going to have their grab ready to go here. Hero has it as well, but you now look at Shikigami. They're in that same kind of spot where Amplify was maybe 2 fights ago. They're going to have 3 good ultimates, but they have to use them smart here. They have to use them sparingly. Gap, though, I could see him basically, with Shikigami starts pushing up a little bit, playing it fast, using that grab almost instantly, but looks like Hero's going to be the one to throw the first fight.
Yes, be thrown directly back. Zach going to go down. Cinerush thrown in by Seaborn. Gap getting incredibly low. They're going to go for the hard chase, and it works out momentarily, but it's Biz who's trying to keep them within the competition, and so far, it's working out well. You're going to try to go for that back cap. 3 people alive to touch right now as Biz going to be forced out. Overtime will be online, and Immortality, or I should say Kitsune, thrown in to be able to keep the other touch alive, but still, Hero needs to be kept up. Solo going to be burnt down, and now everybody, with only Cave left as the savior, they're going to try to pull this one back around right now. Biz has gone down. You get extremely low. Zach's there to try to help out as well to bring this one back in, and with Gap so incredibly low, finished off. This next point going to be secured, and Shikigami is on map point and match point.
What did we talk about, Hunter? What did I talk about? This DPS line for Shikigami, especially going to the last map, needed to step up. Well, they have stepped up, and they continue to find new steps to climb here. Cabe and Hero and Zach doing so much for them there, especially after they lost Hero. I almost said that's the point right there, to Amplify. But now Amplify, look at what they have coming in this next engagement here. Beat, Kitsune Rush, they have both their support roles. They have J-Man, who's kind of been quiet this map. You need them to step up right now.
Yep, Triplet has that beat ready with Hero down. I don't even think it's worth using it. Triplet eventually should be finished off. You have Body still in there. But yeah, this one is just going to be done and dusted immediately. And you're going to be able to get a decent amount of charge if you are at Gap, but you need to be able to try to build up towards these ultimates because Gap and Hero are pretty much dead even right now towards that graph.
And you have to remember they used grab the same time essentially last fight, or last time they used it. So they've been matching each other here pretty well. Ewan and J-Man still having the ultimates right now ready to go for Amplify. And you do have the Sundering Blade coming out here for Biz. Zach to have theirs ready to go here. But Triplet, that beat, they might honestly just have to hold on to it here now, because like you said, the grab is going to be something they really have to deal with here. But if you're Shikigami, you're looking for some opening. You're going to have to deal with J-Man though.
Yeah, Cave though is by themselves, and they're going to be caught out by J-Man right here. And now everybody inside the corner. Cave gonna be able to try to get back here eventually, but Zach introducing the Sundering Blade just to honestly sustain and make room.
Kitsune out here now from Seaborn. Zach gonna be able to find Ewan out. Sundering Blade, though, touchdown Triplet. They already used the beat, so it wasn't matter. Grab, though, out here from Hero. Gonna be able to trap 2, but only find 1. Cave gonna be able to clean up. Does the DPS line come in here clutch again for Shikigami?
I think they do. Again, Cave and Zach there. You're going to get the touch. J-Man takes Cave with them. 85% is still a really good odds right now. And now that Hero has used the grab, Gap is not only going to have the grab, but Triplet isn't going to have a beat for response.
Not gonna have a B, not gonna have a Kitsune Rush, not gonna have a Sundering Blade here. I think this grab from Gap is gonna be huge here for Amplify. But you look at what else Amplify has, well, diddly squat is gonna be the grab that they're gonna hinge a lot on here. So I would not be surprised if they take a fight here, honestly. And if they win or lose, they're okay with it, but they're gonna try to take it very quickly here, because that grab might not be the best usage here in this fight.
Yes, Hero's forced into a really awkward situation, and you don't even need to take care of them and try to take that one away. Zach also getting incredibly low, eventually going to be burnt away, at least should be. He's literally sitting on 1 health. And now with this being the case, 85%, Gap is not reasonably going to have to use this right here. You're trying to get J-Man back into it, who was already trying to clutch up for the squad, but with 88% on the board right here, it should realistically be a cap here as, yeah, Biz gets the finish on Cave, and this is going the absolute limit, Dex.
And this is what we expected from these two teams here tonight. This could be a playoff matchup preview here, but both these teams looking for a victory here tonight. Gap, though, because they did not have to invest that grab, held on to it. Now they have a Kitsune Rush to pair with it. Hero nowhere near their own grab here as we head into the final point of the night here. You're going to have Cave with the overclock. It made a difference last time they had it. Is it going to make one this time around, though? I don't think it's necessarily going to be that important here. If you're Shikigami, you just need to get something going here early on, but Cave taking the off angle, gets Ewan.
That's massive, and now Gap has to make a very rough choice here, whether or not to use that grab, and now Consider Rush going to be thrown in here, back to a 4v4. Gap getting low, but the first point, at least of the first fight, is going to go over towards the way of Amplify, and they're just going to force them out with the Kitsune Rush.
Kitsune Rush out here, but Gap still holding on to their own grab. Beat also ready for Ewan here, but Hero, ever since they used that last grab, they have really struggled to get anything going on Zarya, and this is a moment right now you cannot afford your tank to be kind of slow with it here. J-Man has that overclock ready to go here, and if there's a moment for J-Man to step up and make the plays that we know he's capable of, that would be right now.
Yeah, we see Grab being thrown out into the back line. It's basically Hero being solo pulled, but Hero is still alive. Triplet getting extremely low, and now you gotta try to clutch us out, but unfortunately for them, Zach is making it happen. Already gets rid of 2. May have gotten stunned out in a 1v1 with Fizz, but it's gonna go their way. 65% right here, but still ultimates becoming galore for both squads.
Absolutely. Beat ready here for you, and you're going to have a Sundering Blade. You're going to have Overclock. However, I don't think you'll have Grab, and I don't think you're going to be able to build back up to Kitsune Rush here unless we see a lot of touches in overtime come out here. But you look now over at Shikigami. Both support ult with Sundering Blade. You're going to be able to build up to your own Grab right now if you're Hero. However, worst case scenario here for Shikigami, losing Hero first. Biz, though, already charging in.
Yeah, but here it is right here. Biz is going to go down first and foremost. J-Man eventually going to be pressured out. And now, yeah, Triplet's just taken off the map, by the way. Ewan also has to go and take the reset. It's going to come down to this next fight, and now you only have, what, Beat and Sundering Blade for it.
I love that play, though. They understood the situation right there. Kitsune Rush and Beat came out there from Shikigami. They just backed out. They knew that was a lost fight, so don't stay in there any longer than what you had to. You have the Beat. You have the Sundering Blade. The Beat from Ewan, it's going to be huge here, but when do they use it? Does Hero build up to that grab in time? Does Zach's Sundering Blade find value here? It's going to be a final fight for the ages.
Yeah, and it's down to Hero, realistically, to try to clutch up right here. You see being thrown back the other way. Unfortunately, it doesn't go through the walls. Zach is taken care of. Hero still has the grab. It has to make a very difficult decision. I think the decision is going to be to back up, so it is going to come down to one final fight.
I don't know if I like the decision to back out there. You allow Crazy Cat time to build up to their own Kitsune Rush right now. Ewan still holding on to the Beat, but you look at Cabe. They came in clutch on the third point to put Shikigami on match point here. Now they have their own overclock ready to go. You can see a huge combo come out here, but Shikigami, they have to get a touch here. Cabe, though!
Gets rid of Kings again, and they have to go for the Beat. Taken out, it's Cap, J-Man, Ewan. Only one's alive. Hero, though, has all the sustain in the world to work with. He's trying to burn people down. They're going for the assassinations. Cap is getting slowly burnt away. The heals don't exist anymore. The point starting to cap back over to Shikigami. Only the touch is coming through. A couple more left. And it's gonna be Shikigami clutching it up. Amplify falls apart at the last second, and it's the big must-win for Team Shikigami.
And again, we came into this series talking about how much of a more important series this was for Shikigami. They claw, scratch, and get themselves back into the series with an excellent performance on Shambali Monastery. And I think they did everything right here on Surabasa as well. Amplify, they had their opportunities, but I think you can go back to the last grab we saw come out here from Gap, in my opinion. Only being able to find one person, having it be Hero, who just, I think, invested the bubbles on themselves there to keep them alive. That grab, you're looking for a little bit more there. Yeah, if you got rid of Hero, it goes a long way, and you probably end up winning the map off of it. But Shikigami, talk about a team that fought through a lot here. Again, we've talked about a lot. This roster, the fact they've lost a couple of games that they have this season is a little bit something you didn't expect, but now in the home stretch we talked about in previous seasons, season 6 and season 5, we saw Shikigami be able to go on runs to get themselves into the playoffs, and they were on the outside looking in. Granted, this is not that same Shikigami teams from those seasons, but this is still a team that when everything is put together like this, they can go toe-to-toe with anybody, and they showed it here tonight.
Oh my god, did they ever. It felt really rough at some points. Again, you go through that King's Row, and you see 9 times out of 10, a team like that isn't able to bounce back. But Shikigami become that one. They make it happen. They bounce back. They're able to go back to a style that they're very familiar with. And at the end of the day, as back and forth as it was, it's just being able to barely get it out in these critical fights. Being able to pull it off when sometimes it shouldn't be probable at all. But they make it possible. I mean, you look back at in these situations. Remember, I think maybe perhaps the only reason we got that far. Remember, Triplet is able to go and hit that back cap. The rest of Shikigami clears out Amplify. If that doesn't happen, I don't even think we go to a fifth point in a lot of those situations.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think we do. I think Amplify takes that momentum and just goes on to the next point and wins the map right there. Shikigami, they did everything needed to there. Yeah, you could go to Triplet, getting that touch to the force overtime, but then you could also talk about maybe about a minute later, where it was Cabe and Zach who were able to kind of win that fight without Hero there, because Hero died very early on, and this was a huge map. Again, I talked about a lot, especially after map 3 at Kings Row. This DPS line for Shikigami really needed to step up, as they really struggled. Only 20 combined elims on Kings Row. They stepped up these last 2 maps, 67 combined elims on our final map here tonight, and the least deaths of anyone in the lobby, honestly. 6 deaths there for Cabe, 9 for Zach, who was playing that Vendetta, who you expect to have maybe a little bit more deaths than your average DPS player here and there, but everything was excellent for them. I think Hero really deserves a lot of credit. But one thing, like we've been praising Hero and Cabe and Zach a lot of this. Triplet and Seaborn, we did not talk about them enough here. They did excellent throughout the series. Even when Shikigami was struggling, there were a lot of times where I thought Triplet and Seaborn really helped Shikigami stay in this series. Same thing could be said for the support line on Amplify. I thought Crazy Cat and Ewan, at their best, were playing almost out of their minds. I mean, we go back to the first map. Ewan had the most elims for Amplify. They were finding boop kill after boop kill. They even got one here on Suravasa. And still, Ewan had 23 elims, one of the highest there in the lobby. I mean, more than what Triplet and Seaborn were able to get. These support lines here, I think, are very, very good here. However, one of these teams needed to lose here tonight. Shikigami, like I said, clawed and scratched their way to make sure it wasn't going to be them.
Yeah, and that they did, and now they put themselves in a much better situation right here, because now they move up to 7-5. They put themselves in a really good scenario with only 3 more games to play. And obviously, we'll take a look. We talked about them at the beginning. We'll give a quick look right now. The remaining games that they have sitting on board is going to be up against Emote Down Mid, Nightmare, and In Control, which all those teams are in massively different ballparks, by the way. Nightmare, who obviously trucks along, is now the only undefeated team left in the division. Emote Down Mid, which, by the way, if you weren't paying attention to the other games, 3-0'd Extinction. Like, actually beat them 3-0, which is... That is a tough team to beat, especially in 3-0 fashion. And In Control, which you could say what you want about In Control, guess what? They just won their first game against Hivemind. They took a dub, so they have momentum now to some degree. Again, their momentum for them is staying out of the bottom too, so all these teams that they're going up against do have something important to play for. Shikigami not out of the woods yet, but this puts them in a really good position.
Yeah, especially. I mean, you talked about it there. I mean, this is right now. You said they still play Extinction, right?
No, they face Nightmare, EDM, and In Control.
Yeah, I want to talk about EDM for a brief moment. They struggled. They came out of the gate, and me and you were kind of surprised with how much EDM was struggling. They seem to have righted the ship here, especially in the new year, and they've looked like the EDM team that we have seen in the last 2 seasons. So that's going to be a very, very important matchup for those 2 teams there. Nightmare, again, Shikigami is, I think, maybe that team that could give Nightmare their first loss. Nightmare, though, still has a decent number of games left to play here, so while we're only looking at 1 undefeated team left in this Masters tier, we might not be looking at it for very long. But again, congrats to Nightmare on getting that huge win over Dreamland a little bit earlier tonight. But Shikigami put on a show here. Amplify, so close yet so far away, I think is going to be the thing that you have to say about them coming out of this game, because we talked about a win here puts them at 9. A win tonight would have put them at 9, and me and you feel very comfortable that 9 wins will at least give you a playoff spot.
Yeah, I think that's the territory you live in, and with Amplify in their last couple of games, they still have a game against EU Takeover, which has had some of their own struggles throughout the season. That's the kind of marquee game they need to take away to really solidify their spot in the situation, because obviously nothing is really secured for almost any team. Obviously, with Nightmare getting their 10th win, same thing with Dreamland, those 2 are confirmed for the playoffs. You have Nightmare Academy, who has 8 wins, still has a lot of games to play too. They're in a really good position. You could say the same about Extinction and YFP as well. But it's going to be a lot of these middle of the pack teams, everyone from Shikigami all the way down to Iliad Artemis, that are honestly still EU Takeover. EU Takeover still has quite a few games to play. These teams are all still very much in contention, and it's going to be a wild last couple of weeks to decide this. because before Dex, it came down to maybe 2 or 3 before. We're talking about like 5 teams that are in this middle of the pack where genuinely anything can happen with them.
Yeah, this Masters tier has been insane throughout this entire season because there's been a lot of, well, you've had the two teams at the top of Nightmare and Dreamland kind of in a tier of their own. Everyone below that, I feel like, could beat everyone else at any random point throughout the rest of the season here. And we're getting down to the meat and potatoes of it here. A couple teams going to be finishing up their regular seasons here in the next couple days, while a lot of them will definitely have to get it finished up by next Friday or next Sunday, because I believe that's the actual last day you can finish it. So there's a couple teams that have to play a lot of games in a short amount of time here. But Hunter, I mean, we got an incredible series here tonight, and I think we have an incredible series lined up on Friday as well.
Yeah, we're going to see Dreamland taking on YFP, and Dreamland obviously secured their spot in the playoffs already, but obviously want to get as high of a seed as possible. For YFP, though, they're basically trying to confirm their own spot for the playoffs. They're sitting in really good territory right now, being 7-3. I think this is 100% going to be a playoff team, but to go in and at the very least put up a really good performance against a squad like this, it'd be extremely important, especially now that you see, hey, that Dreamland, they're vulnerable. They are beatable. Nightmare goes and shows that. And again, they still have to face things like both of the Iliad teams. You still have EDM as their next match tomorrow, by the way. They have a couple of tough games in there, but I think if they manage to get a marquee win or two like this, I think they'll be sitting in a really pretty spot. So I'm really excited for that game. We picked it for a reason, obviously. But I'm excited for that. And then, like I said, next week's going to be that last stretch of games where I think a lot of teams are still going to be fighting for their lives. Those 4 or 5 teams I mentioned. It's going to take a lot for some of these teams to make it, but it's still possible. You cannot count anybody out until that final day.
Absolutely. So, hey, just make sure everyone here who's still here watching, make sure you keep up with a lot of it here. I know we're going to have a lot of people streaming it. I know Bullskunk, Mott, ourselves. I'm forgetting the other person. I'm going to look this up real quick so I get it right.
You got this.
Well, yeah, just
who did you name? Who did you name already?
Jilled Water.
Yeah,
Jilled Water.
Jill
another
does a lot
one.
of games too. Yeah.
So to watch, because we're gonna try to make sure we cover a lot of these games, because right now this has been an insanely competitive season of Masters tier. I mean, you talked about it briefly. Last season, we kind of already had a good picture of who was going to make the playoffs and who wasn't. There's a lot of polarity this season, and it's anyone I think can go on a little bit of a run here. But I mean, we'll figure that out here in the next couple of days, as there's going to be a lot of action.
Yeah, there sure will be, but it's already been a late night for us here. Yeah, this is definitely the latest we've been up for a game in a long time. But we want to thank y'all for being out here. Y'all came out in droves today. We appreciate y'all for coming out here watching this fantastic game. Easily my favorite game to cast in quite some time. Hopefully we get ourselves a good match with that YFP versus Dreamland match this next Friday coming up here. Same time, same place. But y'all have yourselves a fantastic night. Keep supporting Tier 2 Overwatch. Keep supporting Faceit League. Keep supporting Overwatch. We love you, and have yourselves a fantastic night.